Hello, ladies and gentlemen. I'm back again with another spontaneous stream, and there's a lot going on here that I want to share with you guys. But let me start off with Psalms 40. Psalms 40, verse 1 says, I waited patiently for the Lord, and he inclined unto me and heard my cry. He brought me up also out of a horrible pit, out of the miry clay. Yeah, folks. Uh, that says a lot. Shout out to whoever is viewing right now. That says a lot about how the state of mind of a person can be. And in this video, hopefully we'll be able to talk to you about, no matter who you are, no matter what gifts you have, no matter your status in life, we know that each and every one of you out there has gone through a time when you doubt what it is that your purpose is, especially if you're trying to do something that is good in this world. So we'll be talking about that and some other things. The lighting in this room is not the greatest, and that is my bed in the background with some pillows. Yes, I'm in my bedroom as I broadcast this. So let me get to you guys on this video. We're talking about Batman v Superman metaphor, realism, and heroism even. We're going to talk about that in interesting ways. Let me get to what we're going to be doing. So let's get the screen share right here. You can always chat in the chat section, chat in the chat. I'm not pointing to my pillows. You can chat in the chat section over there and leave your comments on it or say hello. So, oh, by the way, my channel is one in which you can also donate to via MoneyGram or Western Union. So feel free to do so if you so choose. All right. So going into what we're going to talk about now. Just shuffle across to here. Okay, the room doesn't look that dark. That is cool. Shuffling across to what we're going to talk about right here. So we start off by, I was examining Zack Snyder's works. Now, in fact, all of Zack Snyder's films are filled with irony. Okay, all of Zack Snyder's films are filled with irony. And so it's not surprising that BVS is one of those films that has irony in it. If you want to know some of the hallmarks of Zack Snyder's filmmaking, some of the things he uses is symmetry, he uses irony, he uses repetition, okay? He makes use of visual imagery, and visual imagery, by that I mean, not only is he speaking about the subject at hand, which you will see, but also if you look around in the environment, particularly likes to use works of art to describe what is also going on, as well as describe the principal characters in the movie, the protagonists and the antagonists of the movie. So he loves to use a lot of imagery and therefore a lot of metaphor, symbolism, that kind of stuff. So if you ever watch any Zack Snyder films, these are some of the prominent things in it. And one of the other prominent things in it, as I said before, is irony. So when you look here, there's irony to this scene. I'll also cite some other areas where there's irony, and I'll be discussing that when we go into some other sections. But here, if you look at this photo here, if you know the background behind it, the celebrations that are happening here in Mexico is the Day of the Dead celebration. And that's basically a day when they pray for the dead and when they call into remembrance those who have passed before with well wishes. They try to do well wishes towards them. But anyway, the important thing is this is Day of the Dead. And it's interesting that in that Day of the Dead celebration, there was this fire that broke out. Superman ends up saving a life of a young teenage girl. Okay, so the irony there is, of course, he's saving a life. He's literally saving lives and therefore preventing that person from dying on the Day of the Dead, which is, it's very interesting. It's ironical. And that's just the way how Zack Snyder works. Okay. And if you look, that's how you know if any movie is Zack Snyder's movie. So if you look at Justice League and you see irony in there, and usually the irony is not, a lot of times people take, for instance, Joss Whedon. Joss Whedon may do something which is has a certain degree of sarcasm to it, right? Zack Snyder doesn't really do sarcasm. His irony is not one in which he's trying to be mean. I think the person who best spoke about this, but he doesn't have a channel, but he should really have a channel. It's Trent Osborne. Shout out to you, Trent Osborne. Um, he basically speaks about the same thing I'm talking about here, which is that Zack Snyder, he uses irony. He doesn't use sarcasm. Okay, there's a difference between the two. Even though you will find that Perry White, for example, is very sarcastic about Clark Kent. But for the most part, Zack Snyder usually uses irony. He features irony in his films to show you the paradox of something. He loves to do that. So here you see Superman doing the opposite of what the day is. The day is in remembrance of the dead. So you would think that somebody might die or something like that. And it's almost happened. And Superman says saves the life of this young girl. So he saves a life. And that's quite ironic. And that's the kind of way. In fact, if you go and watch Man of Steel, there's a lot of irony in a Man of Steel. A lot of irony. And Zack Snyder is known for his ironic movies. He likes to push irony. And so it's very interesting that, when you look at, for instance, Man of Steel, Zack Snyder's irony, there's a number of different ironies, but the major irony that he spoke about was the fact that it was not as, generally he has very stylized films which have more style than realism. They push fantasy and style over realism. So if you look at the action scenes, they're kind of very unrealistic, but it's just so cool to see, right? And so Zack Snyder has those kinds of stuff. But if you look at, for instance, Man of Steel is grounded in realism, again, thanks to Christopher Nolan and David Goyer. It's grounded in realism. And so Zack Snyder is actually not doing a lot of unrealistic things in that movie, even though Superman flying and those things are, some people would say unrealistic, and I understand. But for the most part, he stays confined to the laws of physics in that film, whereas Zack Snyder is not always known as a director who conforms to laws of physics. You take Watchmen. Those characters there were not conforming to laws of physics. He was just trying to do, these create these tremendously exaggerated moves, and their fighting was tremendously exaggerated. How they fell through the air and stuff was not realistic. When you look at, say, for instance, Al Zagahul, on the other hand, that is grounded in realism. That's one of his most grounded realistic films. And it is an animated film, but nonetheless, it is the irony of the situation is it's an animated film, but it's not going according to the laws of animation as we know animated films to do. He actually made a very hyper-realistic animated film. And so that's the kind of thing about Zack Snyder. He loves to do these ironical twists on things and go in a different direction. And so Man of Steel, the irony in it was not as stylistic as his general films are. It was more grounded in reality. Even when you think of, I think it's Dawn of the Dead he did. Was it Dawn of the Dead? He did Dawn of the Dead, didn't he? Yeah. When he did Dawn of the Dead, that was, again, a much more grounded film. But again, there was all these stylized elements in it. No, there was no really slow motion anything. But the point is it was stylized. And as a result of that, it was grounded, but it was stylized. And so certain things you have to suspend your reality on and just say, okay, fine. This person was allowed, they had enough time to do this, whatever. So it's those kinds of things. But as I said before, that's the thing about Zack Snyder. One of the things he does is he does some ironical things. Certain things are ironical in his movies. So you point out that. There's a lot more detail inside of this Dawn of the Dead sequence nobody has talked about. I'll talk about that some other time, though. So, as I said before, there's a lot of irony to Zack Snyder's movies. And Batman v Superman is no exception to the rule. Okay. And so what I'm going to do here is under the guise of discussing the theme of power, which is one of the themes that runs through the DCEU, if you haven't realized that by now, Zack really brings it to the fore in Batman v Superman. He really discusses power and how we perceive it and how we see it. Okay. And it's very interesting what kinds of views were actually portrayed out on power, but even more, the verbalized views on power. What I mean by that is people who actually spoke directly using the word power in it. And so therefore describing power. So these are all segments of BVS where people actually were using the word power and what that meant. And so just want to zoom in a little bit more here. Okay, that should be good enough. So let's look at each panel one at a time. So the first and most interesting person, one of the most interesting people in BVS, in my opinion, was General Amaja. And I think General Amaja is completely misunderstood by most people. I heard a lot of people call him a terrorist. And that was very interesting because he's actually, if he were in the Star Wars universe, he would be one of the generals for the resistance. General Amaja is actually a person who is actually saying the establishment that is in my country is unfair, and I'm here to represent the people of my country. He's in fact not necessarily a bad person. We do not know what kind of person he is, but based on what I'm seeing, he's not necessarily a bad person. He's definitely a very much a convicted person. His ways of going about things, because it is a war, are somewhat controversial, but it doesn't necessarily mean that this gentleman here is a terrorist, one, and two, that he's a bad person. And if you listen to his interview with Louis Lane, you probably get that perspective. But again, a lot of people, they see a black person on screen. He is an intelligent black person on screen. And I have to say this because racism is a thing that is real. An intelligent black person on the screen. He absolutely is an African person on the screen. In fact, the actor who is playing this role is African. And he is speaking with wit, with intelligence. And for some reason, people think of him as a villain in this movie. And it's interesting because when you really, that's the thing about Batman v Superman. On first glance, you think you know what the movie's about. But if you go deeper into the movie, it literally starts to unravel a whole bunch of stuff and you're not really paying attention. For instance, let me just go. Janet Clyburn, who is played brilliantly. All right. Janet Clyburn, a lot of people assume she, and even I assumed, she was a Star Labs scientist, a Star Labs forensic scientist. But in fact, if you really were paying attention and you were actually watching the movie, you would realize that she is actually a Pentagon a Pentagon scientist. She's someone working in the Pentagon. And in fact, if you pay attention, you will see FBI agents walking around her. She and more importantly, she's Louis Lane's contact to the Pentagon. But on top of that, and I don't know how Louis Lane got those connections, she is not in Metropolis. She is in Washington, D.C. Okay, she's in Washington, D.C. And if you were really paying attention, you would realize that Louis Lane talked about the people in the Pentagon when she was talking to General Swanwick. The people in the Pentagon can't even ID this thing. Meaning she went to the Pentagon and got in contact with Janet Clyburn, who was working in the Pentagon. Just something for you when you go back to watch Batman v Superman. Because a lot of us, again, we got caught up in the comic book lore and we were not really paying attention to what the movie was saying to us. And I'm going to show you guys how much attention you have to pay to this movie, because there are lots of things I missed in the movie as well that I wasn't paying attention. I was kind of caught up in the storyline. I wasn't paying attention to what was around me to be able to get the answer to my question. Everything that you need to know about this movie is in the movie. And for those of you who read scripture and you're really kind of forensic in how you read scripture, you're going to really love this movie, because this movie is kind of like scripture, how you have to break down scripture. You have to understand scripture. You have to pay attention to what scripture is saying, because a lot of times we don't pay attention to what scripture is saying and we really go by what we think it's saying. And it's the same thing with this movie. If you go by what you think the movie is saying to you, you're going to miss a whole bunch of stuff. And the more I watch this movie, I've watched this movie umpteen times, but the more I watch this movie, the more things I see. And not only the more things I see, but the more I realize how detailed Zack Snyder is in telling his movies. There's a lot of things hidden in plain sight in this movie. Like right now, I'm looking at the designs in the back of this guy. I didn't even pay attention to this. And I just suddenly started to realize how intricate these designs are. Okay, and I'm just looking at this picture and I'm now seeing this. I'm just saying, you have to understand how much work went into, like they said, Zack Snyder's a very, very detailed person. And everything in his movies, has a symbolism. It has a meaning to it. And that's the kind of craziness that goes on with BVS. That's why I said it's a masterpiece of a movie, The Ultimate Cut. And it's something that it could take you years to really uncipher every single detail in it. It's really a detailed movie, okay? And it's becoming more and more something that I really admire, okay? That's why I said, when you talk about BVS as comic book movies, I think it is the #1 comic book movie out there, okay? Remember, I have a lot of fun deciphering movies. Or should I say, enjoying the things that the movie provides that I have not seen or other people are not seeing. So that's the reason why this video is going to be so much fun to you guys, because as the more you watch, is the more you're going to see things that you did not see in the movie. And that's the point behind it. Okay, so anyway, going back, and that's what makes it rewatchable for me. Going back to what I was saying, I will check you guys in the chat section. Maybe I should check you guys in the chat section to see what you guys have to say, because I have so much to say. And I don't know how I'm going to finish it off. But we were talking about irony, right? And here is an irony. Here's an irony that Zack Snyder is highlighting, which is a true irony. The fact of it is, it's a truth. It's something we all believe. And because it's a true irony that we're about to say, it makes it realistic. What makes movies most realistic or relatable, in my opinion, and relevant, is their closeness to the reality we live in. Not only in terms of what things appear to look like, but also in terms of the ideals or the ideas or what people commonly perceive to be true, whether it's true or not. And here, what makes this thing so grounded in realism is that we listen to General Amaja say something that is true. It's so true. I mean, I've been in research. I know about this too. You know, the higher levels in research you go, is the more everything is negotiable, they say. There's no hold fast rules. And he says something that is so true, but so ironic at the same time. It is one of the greatest ironies ever. And he says this: men with power. This is in response to Louis Lane, who was saying that the United States, they're not involved in this. They're staying out. Their policy and their principles keep them from being involved. They are neutral on this. And he laughs at her and he says, men with power obey neither policy nor principle, Miss Lane. And he was so true. And not only is he told us truth that we all receive as true in this world, because the more powerful people get, is the more they tend to feel that they don't have to obey the rules and regulations that are around them, hold fast and still, but there's room for negotiation on everything, right? But in addition to that, in the actual movie, Louis Lane was speaking about the America being neutral, and the CIA was actually infiltrating and trying to monitor the situation. They weren't being neutral now. And in fact, the CIA agent, whose name is, what's his name? Jimmy Olsen. Jimmy Olsen proposes as a CIA agent in the language that General Amaja speaks, which I don't know what that language is. And somebody who knows, you guys can go ahead and tell me what is the actual language that was being spoken, if it's an African language even. He proposes a solution to what has happened, where they're monitoring. And it's interesting listening to the CIA, who has gotten across there. What does the Central Intelligence Agency want to do with that? Now, we know the FBI is on, you know, a FBI deals with things on American soil. The CIA, which is Central Intelligence Agency, is found worldwide. The CIA operatives are worldwide. They're all over the world, okay? And they monitor everything in the world. But my point being, Louis Lane just gave a spiel that, you know, America's neutral in this. You know, they're neutral. And he laughs at that. And then just to confirm him, he discovers a CIA agent in his camp with Louis Lane. She doesn't even know it. And she's with Louis Lane monitoring them. Isn't that crazy? And so, CIA agent underground, by the way. Now, what's funny about this is we learn also through Lex Luthor in the movie, we learn that the government is working with Lex Luthor with Lex Luthor. It's not Lex Luthor alone, doing this. The government knows about this. All right. Central Intelligence gives us information. Now, they say Central Intelligence learns later that Lex Luthor is trying to set up Superman. Like, they found out that through their intel. And I guess that would be through the CIA people they found out that. But the important thing is the Lex Luthor's agents were on the ground. They later find out. And that, they are using experimental weapons, which, interestingly enough, General Amaja they were supposed to be protecting General Amaja. But in addition, General Amaja seems to be getting his hands on those experimental weapons. So all of that was going on, actually. In BVS, all of that stuff was going on in the background. That's a whole other story right there. And I enjoy movies where I can unpack things like that. But it confirms this truth, which is an irony, that the more powerful human beings tend to have, is the more corrupted they seem to become. It is said absolute power corrupts absolutely. So what Lex Luthor believes, what Senator Finch even is afraid of, what Bruce Wayne is afraid of, these are real fears. This is why we don't have monarchies, or should I say dictatorships. We don't have dictatorships. We don't advocate for dictatorships in the world. The United States of America advocates for democracy, shared leadership, where you may have a head, but he doesn't have absolute power over everything. There's senates, there are congresses, a representation of peoples to keep these people in check. There are even smaller governments of given states or given areas. We have also countries, and we don't have somebody who has conquered the entire world and has the entire world bound to them. We have countries, and we have their heads there. And then those heads of those countries can work together in different things. We have the United Nations, for example, which was formed so that we wouldn't have totalitarians, we wouldn't have dictators. And so General Amaja is absolutely correct that men with power obey neither policy nor precept. There's that fear by all of us that the more power you get is the more power you will abuse. And it's interesting because we have these checks and balances, and we call them the watchmen, to watch over these people and to make sure they don't go astray. Each one of us as individuals has a certain level of power. As a collective, we have a lot more power. But a lot of people, when they get to prominence and power, we've seen this even with governments and how corrupted they get and how corruptible they get. They seem to always want to manipulate that power for their own advantage. And all of a sudden, the laws and guidelines become blurry with these people. I see it in my own country. I'm pretty sure you see it in your country. These are truths. Now, the thing about Superman is Superman seems to go against that. Now, is Superman a man like you and me? He's not really human, right? But he is a man. And in fact, he's described as a man, as we'll see here in a minute. But the point is, when you look at Superman, for some reason, even though he is, the allegations are that he is abusing his power. And I'll explain why. But at the end of the day, Superman seems to be the one person in this whole thing that seems to go against that truth. And you know what's interesting about that? That is disturbing to every other human being. So I understand why I can understand why Lex Luthor, who, by the way, to me, is the ultimate villain I've ever seen, because he's a real villain. He actually is as real as they get. Meaning, this is how men with power actually act. Now, I'm not saying that all men with power do this, but I'm talking about people who have really a lot of sway and a lot of power. They see people and things as chess pieces on a board because they have this much power. And so at a certain time, They almost dehumanize human beings, not purposefully or intentionally, but because they are not grounded in the reality of what most people experience. They begin to see people as pieces on a board, and everything's negotiable. You know what I'm saying? Again, they don't get me wrong. People with power generally have good intent. They generally do. Some don't. Okay, fine. But most people with power do have generally good intent, but it is compromised bit by bit because they begin to see life more as a game than they see life for the realism that most people experience. And so I just wanted to say that because I thought it was a very interesting point, and I wanted to go into a deeper dive into this thing. But we're talking about power. Now, people with integrity, and I've met a few of them, are able to have power and still be grounded, to still have not just the pulse of what people on the ground need and are speaking about, but also to be able to strongly identify with that and therefore be driven by the passion that this is what you're about. And that's when somebody has a good sense of purpose and therefore their character. And that's why I always speak about character a lot. Their character is not compromised by their change in position. And they use their power to ensure that the people on the ground, which are many, are benefited in as big a way as possible by the power they have. And they realize then that they don't really have that much power, which is the important thing. See, a lot of times, you know, wealth and influence seems to be enough for one individual. But when you start to spread that influence and wealth amongst the masses, all of a sudden the power that you thought you had and the wealth you thought you had isn't much. Because there's 7 to 8 billion people in the world. That's a lot of people. And if I am a multi-millionaire and I split that money among 7 billion people, all of a sudden it is not much money. It's less than $1 each person will get. Let me put it to you this way. I have influence. Lots of people see me all over the world. They know my name. I'm well known. But as I can do a lot with that influence with a few people around me. But as the numbers increase exponentially, my effectiveness of my influence suddenly starts to decrease. And so as much as we speak about power, and this is what the people with power and influence understand, that they have to get the masses on their side. Otherwise, it's not going to work. Okay. It's a numbers game. Okay. And that's why you hear a lot of people with power and influence talk about the world is overpopulated. They are saying that because their influence and their power decreases every single time there's another new person brought into the world. You've got to understand what's going on. It's harder. It's a lot harder because it has to do with distribution to influence populations which are bigger than smaller populations, because not everybody has the internet. Not everybody has access to phones and electronics. There's a significant portion of the world that still does not know some of the most prominent people in the world. A significant portion. We're talking millions of people who don't know that. Whether it's because of the political system they're in, like China, where, you know, there's a lot of people who are not engaged in the internet like we are. It's regulated. And China holds 1/3 of the world's population. Think about what I'm saying here. So I'm trying to put it in perspective so people will understand how much influence and, power is not as much as people think. No one person, as much as we talk about Jesus, Superman, you know, these are very, very well-known names. How much can you do with them? Tells us how much power you actually have. And so that's the important thing for people to understand. And a lot of times we don't really discuss these things, but these are topics that I think, again, are important. So again, men with power obey neither policy nor principle, Miss Lane. So Superman has a lot of power. He has power and influence in ways that you and I don't have. He has abilities that he can use at his disposal that we don't have. But again, as much as he has all that power, Superman, his whole idea is to inspire people. His whole idea is to positively influence people, save people, help people, empower people. But he can't do it because he only has so much power and so much influence. And so if somebody's made up their mind that he's a villain, he's not going to change their mind. And so at the end of the day, that is why he's limited. That's the irony of these films. Zack Snyder's irony. Here you see the General Amaja talk about the irony of men with power, but even more importantly, even the people with power, it's ironical that they really don't have that much power that everyone thinks they have to effect change. That's why governments of countries, they're limited in how much they can really affect you and me. What can actually create the biggest change is when people on the ground actually change themselves. Because on an individual and a localized level, you have more effect, you have more influence than on a broader scale. And it is because of the localized ground, the grassroots level, people buying into things, you can have this bigger effectiveness amongst the masses. Okay. And that's why I always say to each and every individual, you really do count. And we'll talk about that more as this video goes along, because there are these different elements in Batman v Superman that are highlighted in this movie, and it really brings to head all these different elements. Batman v Superman is a very special film in many different ways. So I just wanted to discuss that. And let me just see what you guys are saying in the chat section. If you guys are saying anything in the chat section to start with. Oh, wow. So we got a whole bunch of people. Shout out to you, Trent Osborne. You know, I I just shouted you out because I thought this would be great. You guys are being seen right now also all over the place. And so I have so much more to say on this movie. And it's just so much to say on this movie. It's going to take me a while, but I'm going to try and get it done. So Trent Osborne says, I love the irony, he says, irony of Bruce. He's talking about his legacy in the decayed remains of Wayne Mansion, yet doesn't realize he's about to actually destroy it, despite literally standing on it. Yes, that's right. And morally and ethically, it's the end of the House of Wayne, which is what, ironically, Alfred says afterwards. That's right, Trent Osborne. Shout out to you, Trent. It's really nice to see you. I really appreciate you as a person because you look at things below the surface as what they are, and I love that about you. And I wish you well. I hope also that you will prosper. I hope we can do something online which will benefit each other financially as well. Cavius Hale. Cavius Hale says, do you think the new movie, shout out to you, Cavius Hale, first of all, thank you for coming on my channel. Do you think the new movies will connect to the DCEU? Once they're in the DCU, they will. But some of the new movies are not going to connect to the DCU. They are elsewhere. Think of them as elseworld film stories. So we are talking about like the Joker that's coming out with that actor who's a very skilled actor. He was in Gladiator. He was one of the Caesars in Gladiator, which was a fantastic movie. He does a fantastic job, and he will be, you know what's interesting? I do not know what their take on the Joker is going to be. So I'm really excited for this because I don't know if they're going to portray him as a negative person, as a victim. I don't know how they're going to portray him. So I'm really interested to see, because the fact that they have this material for the Joker means somebody's been working on this Joker film for years. Okay. And Warner Brothers have been licking their chops, looking for the opportunity to do so. And I applaud Warner Brothers on wanting to put out this film, The Joker. This is going to be, you know, it's interesting. A lot of people in the population, they don't really think things through. So like, why do we need another Joker movie, right? And it's like they said, you know, people were licking their chops about a Han Solo movie, and then all of a sudden, oh, why do we need a Han Solo movie? Well, I think we needed a Han Solo movie to tell more about the Star Wars universe, and I thought it was a fantastic movie. So similarly, I think The Joker as a movie is a fantastic movie. Now, I know a lot of people really are calling out for Man of Steel 2, especially after Justice League, where they saw Superman, you know, kind of more fully as we know Superman to be. And so people would love to see that. But I think that the tribute in Justice League to Superman was good enough. For we don't need another Man of Steel, you know, a sequel to Superman right now. In fact, we know Superman's going to pop up in Shazam, for example. We don't even know if he's going to pop up in Aquaman, or there's something to do with Superman and Aquaman. But he's an influence throughout the DCEU. And what was beautiful about it, why people even calling for a Man of Steel 2 film, is the fact that Zack Snyder was good enough, even with the Justice League movie, which has been, you know, it's a mixed movie between Whedon and Snyder. Even that movie has paid such a wonderful tribute to Superman that people are actually calling for the Man of Steel 2 film, which I find really wonderful as well. So anyway, Cavius Hale says, I think the DC's ways of making movies is the good ways to make movies. I absolutely agree with you. You know, I like what DC Films is giving, and I'm talking about BVS specifically right now. I've been spending a good portion of my time looking into this movie and just kind of going through it forensically. And God damn it, man, it's just way too much. There's just way too much to talk about in this movie. And so it's I mean, I'm overwhelmed sometimes, you know, the ideas that come up in my head and the things I see in it. It's ridiculous. I mean, it's ridiculous. It's really a work of art. Literally, like there's art in it almost every step of the way. You know, paintings, sculptures, animation. Oh my God. So it's ridiculous. So I mean Zach and Terrio and Goyer, they put their heart and soul into that movie, and it was sad that people condemned it. But then again, I'm going to actually discuss that as well, and you know, as I go along here. And then Cavius Hale says BBS has so many hidden messages, hidden in plain sight. Okay, I still haven't found the Supergirl. I haven't found the Supergirl nod to her, and that she's in the universe, or possibility that she's there. So I would love to find out where that Supergirl nod is. I know Zach's not flippant with that. And that means I have to read up a lot of Supergirl comics and stuff and just kind of try and get myself familiar. And that's the kind, you know what, the fun part for me in actually talking about these movies, it's the search, the hunt, keep on looking, scraping. Just the funnest part of a movie for me that I love already is actually unwinding and researching and finding all these new things. You guys would not know the countless hours it takes to research these things to even bring it to you guys. And, you know, for you guys, you may not have the thrill of that, but for me, it's a thrill to find things and to hunt things down, to find answers to questions, because I'm a scientist. I like research. So for me, this is just great. All right. I get a blast out of doing this. And the fact that Zack Snyder's hidden things and he tells you, you know, there, and he's kind of hinting, he doesn't really come straight out and say anything, is awesome. You know, that's what I love. And so for me, just talking about BVS or talking about a DCU movie or talking about a DCU film, for me, it's absolute joy. It's like Zack Snyder made these movies for me. You know, the people, maybe it's not mainstream, maybe it is. But for me, it's a joy to talk about these movies and to really look at them and just share with you guys on social media these movies and even share my soul with you guys in terms of what it means to me. It's an awesome opportunity. So I'm just happy and blessed and glad to be talking to you guys about this while I have the resources to do so. All right. Trent Osborne says, Lex Luthor loves irony. He offers Wallace a chance to stand for something, yet how Wallace will stand for something is by causing a similar tragedy to what happened to him. That's irony and so sadistic. And Trent Osborne, the funniest thing about that is, metaphorically, Wallace gets a chance to stand for something. But the mockery in Lex Luthor's sentence is that Wallace cannot stand. He still has to sit in a wheelchair. That's the irony. He didn't give him something that he could stand up with. He could have helped him. Iron Man showed you that, what's this guy's name? He could have given him artificial legs. He didn't have to bring another wheelchair for him. I'm just saying. Think about what I'm saying. And so the irony is that he literally is making fun of Wallace. He doesn't think of Wallace as a human. He does not care for Wallace. He sees him as a tool. And I just find that so ironic as well. So anyway, back to what we were doing here, because I have so much to unpack and that it's just ridiculous. This is a deep dive into Batman v Superman. I'm actually spending some very, very, and I'm sure Zach and Company Limited have had these discussions about these various things. And even if he hasn't, I just see it in the movie and I just think it's worth commenting on. And again, realism allows for this platform for these kinds of things to happen. So I just thought this was just exciting for me to just see. And so anyway, so this was the first statement by General Amaja concerning power. And then he goes on to say something that's related to it that what's his name? Lex Luthor will actually elaborate on. And this is so true. It's something that's insightful, actually, because it's something I never really thought about. And that is ignorance is not the same as innocence. That is such a deep saying that it would take me a long time to unpack how much we could talk about this. Okay, let me give you an example of what I mean. A lot of times I've heard political people say, I have no recollection of that. Or I didn't know that this is what we were doing. A lot of people even defending Donald Trump say, it was a stupid statement. And really, he's been kind of ignorant of certain things. When literally his intention, first of all, it was not ignorant. He actually knew what he was saying. But nonetheless, they use it as a cover. So when Lois Lane says, I didn't know, which is something that criminals say, by the way, a lot in the court, or I didn't know about that, or I don't recollect that, right? A lot of people say that. For the first time in a movie, I'm seeing a comic book movie, that is, I'm seeing someone calling out someone in that bullshit and separating their ignorance of something from being innocent of it. In fact, if you, for instance, are driving in a certain area, right? And let's say, for instance, there's a rule or regulation in that area that you broke. And then you come to the people and you say, you know what? I didn't know. I'm new to this area. I didn't know that. That doesn't mean you didn't do something wrong, right? Let me give you an example. Some people, a guy goes and he goes and he speaks to someone and he thinks he's making the joke. And that person is manic depressed. It's a manic depressed person. And this person makes a joke to them about their manic depression, and the person goes and kills himself, right? He goes on to say, I didn't know that person was a manic depressed person. Yeah, but you still said what you said to them, which was wrong. And two, they went and killed themselves. They acted on that. So that's where ignorance is not the same as innocence. Somebody who's innocent of a crime or innocent of something, some wrongdoing, literally, that's okay. But someone who is ignorant of wrongdoing but does wrongdoing still did wrongdoing, right? Now we take into account that they're ignorant of what they did, but still they did something that was wrong. And in this case, Lois Lane lied. She told the general that America is being neutral while harboring an American CIA agent who was monitoring the people. Now, she may not have been aware that she had said misinformation, and she may not have been aware that the agent that she brought in was CIA. She may not have been aware of these things, but it doesn't mean she didn't do it, right? It doesn't mean she didn't do it. And so General Amaja is 100% correct in saying ignorance is not the same as innocence, Miss Lane. He's right. He's absolutely right. You still did these things. You may not have been aware of what you were doing, but you did them. You're the person who brought. He said to her, "You brought him here." He said, "You're CIA." She said, "No, no, I'm not CIA. You brought him here." Okay, she did bring the guy there. She may not have been aware that he was CIA, but she brought him here, and that's why that has repercussions. And so, what this teaches us, and I hopefully teaches the president of the United States, is you can't just willy-nilly say things. You have to reflect on what you're doing, every step of what you do, because everything you do has a consequence. And you can't just step up after you've done what you've done and cause the problems that you caused and say, well, I wasn't aware of that. You can't do that. Especially someone who is in public office or someone who has influence and power. Remember, Lois Lane has power. She's part of the media. She can create a voice to anyone. And she was there to give General Amaja a voice. So she had power. And so you cannot just go into a place recklessly. You can't just recklessly do things. You have to think about the consequences of what you're about to do. Which is why when you have a public platform, you can't just say any old willy-nilly thing. You have to be responsible. Don't tell me there's freedom of speech, because there's freedom within limits in every country. So don't just tell me I have freedom. It's a democracy, so I have freedom. No, there's freedom within limits. Right? You can say things which incite violence. You can say, go and kill those people down the road. And people going out. You can't do that. You can't do that. That's a criminal activity. You would have caused intent and purpose for the people who commit the acts. And you would have been the one who incited such. So there's freedom of speech, but there's freedom within limits. Every democracy is like that. You can't just say anything you think or say anything you want to say and then turn around and say, I didn't know that they were going to do that. No, you can't say that. Ignorance is not the same as innocence. And that's a power, again, it's related to power. There are other things that are literally statements spoken of power. So that's the truth. And again, Chris Terrio is the guy behind this. So that's why you get this kind of substance inside of his movies. So when I hear people say that, this movie was presumptuous, I'm like, man, you're not being serious. All right, let's go on. Let me just blow this up a little bit more. Okay. Now, General Amaja's statements, literally Lex Luthor combines them. I just want to go straight to Lex Luthor's statement that he says here, which is very interesting. Lex Luthor down here, when he's speaking to Senator Finch, he says, "Do you know what the oldest lie in America? Do you know the oldest lie in America, Senator? It is that power can be innocent." Now, that statement in and of itself is not completely true, right? Because even in his particular world, we learn very quickly that Superman kind of makes that statement sort of false. Now, he doesn't completely make the statement false, and I'll explain to you why. But the point is, he makes the statement sort of false. All right? For instance, each of us today have a certain level of power. Now, the one thing we all can say is all of us in the world today have committed things and done things which are wrong. So we've used that power in a wrongful way. And therefore, none of us are innocent, right? But it is true to say, however, that power itself, because power is used to sustain life and everything, cannot be said to be necessarily not innocent, right? Now, there are two very important things to understand, because that statement can be analyzed two different ways. But before I go on to that, let me just check back in the chat section, because I know you guys are buzzing right now in the chat section. I can tell you guys are buzzing in the chat section. Oh, I'm absolutely wrong. I thought you guys were buzzing in the chat section. I'm wrong. Okay. I thought you guys said something. Okay. Let me go back to what I was saying. So let me it could be taken two different ways. Let me explain what I mean. Someone can be violated, and therefore they're not innocent anymore of things going on around them. So, for instance, someone's raped. Now, someone who's raped, they're no longer naive. Therefore, they're no longer innocent. They have knowledge of things. Maybe innocence is not exactly the word. I was thinking maybe innocence. Maybe I'm wrong. But yeah, innocent is probably the wrong word. Naive is the other word. So no, there's only one way to take power. To take this statement, and that is that power that generates the world, that sustains the world, that keeps the world running, is innocent, as far as I can tell. But when you talk about power by men held, generally most people who hold power are not innocent completely. They have some dirt on them. Everybody has, I'm pretty sure. So this is where, you know, Lex Luthor to some degree is telling the truth, and it also has some caveats to it. Right? Now, what's interesting is Superman, he's not innocent of killing citizens. He's killed citizens, innocent citizens. He's killed people. All right. In the Ground Zero episode, it wasn't, you can't blame him for killing people, but he has killed people. I can show you. I can show you replays where he crashes into cars and people are in cars. I've seen him crash through a building and all these cars in that building fall down. People in the building fall down. Okay. I've seen him crash through buildings. And you see people scampering this way and that way, and some people get knocked away. Okay, so knocked out of the building. Okay, and they die. Okay, so yes, he has inadvertently, with the Ground Zero event, Black Zero event with General Zod, killed people. Yes, General Zod is the one that slammed him through buildings and stuff like that. But the point is, inadvertently killed people. All right, so he's not innocent of killing people. Superman, yeah, go check it out. Man of Steel. So in a way, you know, when you talk about, you know, when Lex Luthor uses this statement, it's to a certain degree, it's true. And it's something that he's saying is an old lie in America, that everybody's clean. No, everybody's not clean. And people with power doesn't mean that they're clean either. And this country has had a dirty, dirty history. That's what he's trying to say. And in truth, there has been some very dirty things that happened in America's history and in each country's history that are dirty. And, you know, we don't really address them. And they're kind of like the elephant in the room, right? And so it's important for us to get those things vetted out there and get it out there as soon as possible. That'll help us to move forward, because everybody's dirty in a certain way, right? I remember in Krypton, I remember Segel saying, you know, all of our hands are dirty. Now, anyway, this falls in, and it's this falls in line with what I just said about what General Amaja just said, and that, so you know, that first of all, people with power, they don't always follow the laws and norms and ideals, and so he was saying nobody's neutral here, and that was confirmed. And then he goes on to say ignorance is not the same as innocence, right? So let's go and discuss the other issue with power. It's very interesting, but the other side of the spectrum is this: powerlessness, how people feel. Now, it doesn't mean you're powerless, because every single individual on this planet, I don't care who they are, they have a certain level of power. No matter what their status, their condition is, they actually have a certain level of power that they're not utilizing. But anyway, Alfred goes on to ironically speak about the opposite of that. And he's speaking to a man who has a certain degree of power. We're talking about Bruce Wayne. And so it's funny to hear him speak about powerlessness with a guy who has so much power. But it is what it is. And that's the irony of the situation. So, again, I'll check in the chat section, guys. I'll check in the chat section in a couple of seconds. So you can go ahead and comment on that as we are going along. I don't know if you're actually hearing me. Let me just do a feedback here. This thing could take forever. It could take like the next century. Okay. Let me just see if you guys are on that as we are going along. Okay. Yes. So let me move on with what I was saying, because I know you guys are watching this. So anyway, he says, that's how it starts, sir. And he's talking about innocents die, Men fall from the sky, you know, gods hurl thunderbolts, innocence dies. And then he says, that's how it starts, sir. The fever, the rage, the feeling of powerlessness that turns good men cruel. And it's interesting hearing him talk about how innocence die. And again, innocence die. The theme of innocence comes in with power over and over again in this movie. And the important thing is the rage over innocent people dying. In fact, Bruce Wayne goes on when he's facing Superman, and he says, the lesson I learned, is that my parents died in the gutter for no reason at all. And I learned that for the world to work, you have to force it to. And it's interesting hearing Bruce's philosophy on things, because he has a certain degree. Batman is born out of a feeling of powerlessness, that no matter, these people have all this power and influence, and yet they couldn't stop their demise. They couldn't stop their death, because they cannot influence with all their power, with all of their wherewithal that they have, influence. They cannot stop someone from making up their mind to do something terrible. And that issue was actually addressed in Wonder Woman, where Wonder Woman realizes no hero can change people's choices. That comes down to the individual. Like I said to you, this movie is basically saying two things. It's saying that, yes, there is, people can have a lot of power, and they can even have a lot of influence. But when you start to play the numbers game, all of a sudden they don't really have that much power and that much influence that they think they have. They have machines to be able to distribute things and put things in front of people's faces, and even sort of in a certain way hypnotize people and get them to kind of speak what they're saying. They have that sort of influence, but at the end of the day, it still comes down to each individual person what they will choose to do. And they try to sway people's opinion, but at the end of the day, there's only so much they can do and so much resources they have to do it. And so it's why I say this is interesting is because as much as the Waynes in Gotham had a lot of influence and they were doing a lot of positive things and they were doing a lot of good things, they never reached that criminal, that guy, that Joe Chill. They never reached him. They had limits to what they could do and their influence and their power. That's why I keep on saying over and over and over again, it's still, these superhero movies are saying it comes back to you. You can't be blaming other people for the bad things happening. You are the one to change how your society will be. You are the one. It comes back to you. We can talk about superheroes till we're blue in the face. But at the end of the day, you have to be a superhero in a small way. And we'll come back to that again. This topic is going to come up over and over and over again. It's going to come back to, it's always up to you. It's you to act. It's you to put out something positive into the world, into the atmosphere. It's you to do that. And in your little small way, if everyone like you did the same thing, it would have a much bigger impact than the richest man, than the strongest man, than a Superman. It would have a better impact, a greater impact, because there's more of you than there are of those people. You understand? And that's important for you to understand. All right? It's very important for you to understand. So in this, again, in this movie, it comes full circle again. Comes full circle. Now, Bruce is feeling powerless, like how he felt in the alley with his parents. But more importantly, he feels powerless because he knows he's limited in what he can do. And he's filled with rage and anger. You heard him speak later on in the movie, and he says to Alfred, he says, criminals are like weeds, Alfred. You pluck one out, another grows up in its place. He's frustrated. He does not know how to make a dent and make an impact because he's alone. He's one person, and he's only working alone. Lesson number 2, you can't save the world alone. You have to be able to work with other people to make these things happen. A sense of community again. And that's the beautiful thing about all of these movies, to me, the DCU movies especially. They're not movies where I'm laughing my butt off most of the film and eating popcorn. No, these movies are serious. I understand why a lot of people did not like Batman v Superman. Certain people, at least, not a lot of people, but certain people didn't like it because it was so. First, it was too heavy for some people. Not for me, but it was too heavy for some people. They went into the cinema and it was so serious, and they're thinking this is a comic book movie. You should popcorn, kick up, and laugh. This movie was not that. This movie was looking at us in a very serious way, and people didn't like what they saw. They didn't like seeing the world as it really is. They went into a movie to see a movie, fantasy. They didn't want to see reality again. That's why I love this movie, because it's very real. If you have people who are considered super by other people, guess what? It doesn't take away that they're people and they make mistakes and not always perfect. And they're limited in what they can do. Both Batman and Superman in these movies were limited by what they could do. And we're going to discuss that in more detail again. And imagine, these are great mythical characters. These are fantastic characters. These are characters everybody knows about, Batman and Superman, And this was one time where Batman and Superman can't save you. That's what this movie was saying. They can't save you. You have to decide what you want to do for you. I find that beautiful because I'm tired of this hero worship. Oh, in my country, Prime Minister Rowley, he's a good prime minister. He'll save us. No, he won't. Oh, Donald Trump will save us. Oh, Barack Obama will save us. Oh, George Bush will save us. No, he won't. There's only so much one person can do. Stop with the hero worship. Stop it. You can save you. Nobody else can. And when we take that sense of responsibility, accountability, we get empowered. You, me, we make choices. And we must live with those choices. And we'll make mistakes. Let's keep it moving. So here, Alfred is identifying to Bruce his powerlessness. And even though Alfred has identified to Bruce his powerlessness, guess what Bruce does? He ignores him and he continues down that line. Because Bruce is a character that has made up his mind. And a person who has made up their mind is a person who is very difficult to change their mind. When people pick sides, and I'm going to talk about partisanship, especially blind partisanship, and it happens in my country too, politically and otherwise. People align with their religion, and they are not open to anything anybody else will say about anything. I've seen people become so partisan in politics that they just cannot hear the voice of reason. I have seen people become tremendously fanatical and partisan when it comes to sports. And no matter how much logic somebody tells them, they are not open to reason. Movies. I've seen people become so fanatical about movies that they are apologizing for films which are not creatively good. We've seen this over and over again. How open-minded are people when they've made up their minds? Not very open-minded. We must guard ourselves against that. Because sometimes someone needs to speak to us as we're in a downward spiral. And the very same thing people talk about with addictions, or people talk about with people who have serious mental illnesses and problems, guess what? You and me, we share those things too. When we close our minds to what other people are saying, because they're Muslim, because they're Hindu, because they're some other group than ours, we have to open our minds past that, past the race of a person, past their appearance. Let's look at what they do. Let's look at what they say. Let's judge them on that. Similarly with movies and everything else. Let's stop worshiping people. Let's look at the ideals that they represent. You can worship ideals. It's okay. Because guess what? An ideal doesn't have a certain look. It doesn't have a certain face. And if it does have a certain look and a certain face, it means you've already started to build a shrine and an idol to something that the ideal is not. So I love to talk about these movies because to me, there's substance in them. Let's see what you guys are saying in the chat section. I know I said I was getting to the chat section. Let me just see. Oh, wow. You guys lit up the place. Okay, let's get to it. Oh, wow. I'm not too sure where we are at. Okay, guys. So Trent Osborne says it's the same as a weapon. A weapon can't do anything wrong. It's unable to. A knife can't kill someone unless a person wielding it. Power is an abstract notion determined by how people use it. Exactly. That's why power is not necessarily good or bad, innocent or guilty. You're absolutely correct. Trent Osborne says, people are the ones who are not innocent. And no one can truly be innocent. That would mean they never did anything wrong. It would wrong, be it deliberately or unknowingly. Correct again, Trent Osborne. You're hitting the hammer on the head, my brother. Power is something that falls to our responsibility in its use and understanding. That we can't or even should be able to do everything. Absolutely. Absolute power is not meant for any one individual. Well, I will say this to you. I would say it this way. I think absolute power is meant for absolute power. Power in and of itself is something. And so I would say that absolute power is meant for absolute power. How Christian folk would say it, because I'm a Christian, you may not be, is absolute power is in God's hands. And if you think of God as goodness, and it's a good thing, and you think of power as a good thing and used for goodness, then absolutely that's the answer. So that's how I look at it. I think of an abstract thing as being owned by abstraction, if you want to put it that way. Dave Ethan says, hey guys, just got back from seeing Skyscraper. Oh, that's awesome, man. I didn't get to see, I don't think I'll be going to see Skyscraper, unfortunately. It's not because it's not going to be entertaining a Dwayne Johnson. I mean, I'm not necessarily a moviegoer per se. So I would love to maybe go, maybe I'll watch it. Maybe I don't think I'm going into the theater to see it though, but that's nice. You're a movie theater kind of person. That must be an enjoyable experience. I hope you enjoyed it, Davies, and I'm pretty sure you did. Damian Anton Vincent says, good day, Anson. BVS for some people is like looking at a mirror and seeing the ugliness in themselves. Exactly. Unfortunately, that's why some people actually, it repulses some people. It's just way too familiar for them. But do mind you, BVS is also showing the good in people, the good within ourselves. But, you know, usually people dislike something because they feel like the thing kind of hit them with a lash in their face. They got slapped. Okay. And there are a lot of things in BVS which will slap people. And it can be very unpleasant. I got slapped too in the movie quite a lot. And let me just say that it was not very pleasant for me. But I feel like that is something that movies are supposed to do as a reflection of our society, especially realistic movies. So I took the slapping and I said to myself, you know what, I needed that. You know, that's why one of the reasons why I hated Lex Luthor was because he was slapping me in my face concerning certain things about myself that kind of got me scared. So I'm just saying this to say that people hate what they don't understand. Shall I put it that way? Trent Osborne. He says, which is unfortunate, as it isn't saying they're ugly. It's actually saying they're beautiful and can do so much to make a difference. The mirror is not ugly. Has a great deal of hope in it. Oh, absolutely. But remember, people are offended. You know, you can say a load of good, and you say one thing that offends people, and people remember the thing that offended them. So, you know how it goes, Trent Osborne. Or, most people meditate on, like, okay, say you're a popular person, right? Oh, let me use another better one. So a woman, she's beautiful. Lots of people are congratulating her, telling, "Oh, you look wonderful today in that outfit," etc. And one guy turns around to her and says, "You don't look. Don't listen to the people. They're fooling you, man. You look like shit." She will remember that. She will remember that over all the other statements, all the other good things that people say. And that's just the way we are. We are sometimes, especially if we don't know who we are, and even if we do, we remember the negative things because society is kind of sort of brainwashed us and bombarded us with negative things all the time. So it's something that we're kind of familiar with. So, it's just what it is. Let me go back to what I was saying here in this movie, because I am taking a very long time to dissect this thing, and I really want to do it faster, but it is what it is. So, as I said before, the fever, the rage, the feeling of powerlessness that turns good men cruel. So Bruce is not hearing Alfred. But what's beautiful about it is now we see the absence of power, powerlessness. And this is juxtaposed against power. Unfortunately, we've seen a number of statements which are negative concerning power, but nonetheless, most of them, the statements that are said concerning power, again, they're negative. Now, people can interpret it positively or negatively. Now, the average person is going to interpret the movie as negative. It's like, that's why you hear people say, Batman v Superman is nihilistic. Because there's a lot of, the way how things are couched and said are very negative. And people think of it as very dark. But that's a reflection of our world. Now, there are positive things to power, clearly. But this movie doesn't necessarily, with using the word power in it, speak those things. Now, the movie does speak about the positive things of power, but it doesn't use the word power. Like, nobody's saying power at that point in time. And it's interesting that power is seen in this negative light so far, but powerlessness, which is the absence of power, which is the juxtaposition of it, is also seen as negative for people who have power. And that's the interesting thing, that they're trying to make a difference for good as well. And so it's wonderful to see how Alfred couches that, because that in itself, to me, is a beautiful thing. All right. Anyways, I got so much to say, and I'm probably going to take 10 hours if I don't move on. So I have to move on to the next statement here, which is a very interesting thing. And this statement, let me say, for me, a person who believes in this kind of thing, in the gnosis and knowledge, this is a scary statement for me as well. And because I've gone through certain experiences in life and stuff, it's a very scary statement. And in and of itself, what Lex Luthor says is a concern to anybody who has been someone who dwells on knowledge. So Lex Luthor basically says this: books are knowledge. Knowledge is power. And what am I? No. He literally is jolted by what he's about to say next. Because what he has to say next is the very fear that all of us have. Let me explain what I mean. Currently, the president of the United States of America is Donald Trump. Now, some people say he's a brilliant person, but a lot of his actions are not brilliant. Imagine this guy has the power to use nuclear weapons. He is the head of the free world. He is the most powerful man in the free world right now. We have knowledge of what he's doing. We have knowledge about better ways of doing things. We have knowledge about so much. And yet, right now, the people who have knowledge on so many things, including people in the CIA, the FBI, the Special Intelligence, the Services of America, the different institutions of America, who know these things and know Donald Trump is not really listening to them right now, they can express very vividly what Lex Luthor is about to say. The bittersweet pain among men is having knowledge with no power, because it's paradoxical. But he really verbalize the last part. It's frightening. It's frightening. You have all this knowledge and so many different things, and yet you're powerless to do anything about the situation. That is frightening. That's why a lot of people in the United States of America are panicking. They're afraid. It's like people who know everything about a terrorist attack except for maybe a few details. Or they know everything about the terrorist attack, but they can do nothing because they're not in a position to do anything about it. Because they can't contact anyone. They may be people who are tied up or whatever, and they know everything about what's going to happen, and they know they're going to die next. And they can do nothing about it. Do you know how terrible that is? That's worse than being ignorant of what is about to happen, and it happens. You know everything. I know about this. Been in research. And again, I'll share my soul a little bit. When in research, I was trying to help someone. And one of my superiors, I will not mention his name, told me step by step what they would do to that person. And it was terrifying for me because I, at the time, did not know the extent to which human beings would go, especially considering I was in a certain institution that was religious. And everything that the person told me happened exactly in the order it went. And what's interesting, and even more terrifying, is the fact that I, with my best efforts, could do nothing to change the outcome of that situation. I had all the knowledge of it, but I was powerless to do anything about it. And so I was filled with fever and rage, and it turned me for a moment cruel, because I have the flight or fright hormone, and either I fight or I run. I didn't choose to run, I chose to fight. I'm saying this to you guys so you will understand, like I said, I'm going to bare my soul a little bit, that this movie is as real to me as what happened to me in the past. Lex Luthor is verbalizing something that I can fully identify with. And the very Lex Luthor scares me. He scares me because he reminds me of real people in the real world. The real terrorists in the real world, they're not big, buff, really knows how to use weapons bad guys. No, they're people like Lex Luthor. They're nerds. They know nuance and subtlety. And they have power, folks. Lots and lots of power. They've studied human behavior. And when they want to do nefarious things to protect themselves, they do it without a scratch. When they commit crimes, no one's going to find them out. So Lex Luthor's real. He's real. Let's move on. Let's see what you guys are saying in the chat section. Dave Ethan says, I really do. Very informative video you're putting on. And that's right. Hatred, like any other power in the world, without reason or without thought, it might destroy a lot of people. Oh, only destroys, man. That's all it does. Trent Osborne says, just like how love and adoration can bring destruction if not having true reason, telling someone nothing but their good qualities will completely and utterly destroy them psychologically. Actually, no, I disagree with that. That just means they're focusing on positive things. Now, it doesn't necessarily mean that that's love, though. See, flattery. Usually people want to destroy people, use it by flattery. And flattering someone, I mean, I've told you, I've been in these circles. I know. I've heard people say, I care about you, and they don't care about you. They want to kill you. They want to destroy you. Okay, literally. So a lot of people literally use words and phrases with, the opposite intent. Okay, I'm just letting you know. Love and adoration never brings, ultimately doesn't bring destruction. Ultimately, the word love sustains everything, ultimately. But good intentions can bring destruction. Okay, that's what I believe. TNJ Alice says, hashtag stay humble. Absolutely. TNJ Alice says, what's up, homies? TNJ Alice says, what's up, Christian disciple? My name is Anson, so you can call me Anson, TNJ Alice. Trent Osborne says, someone who has faced nothing but pain and suffering is dangerous. However, someone who has been told they are perfect all their life is every bit as dangerous. Absolutely, I agree with you. Well, not again. Yes, I agree with you. They would be dangerous because they expect everyone to say that. So I agree with you. Pain and suffering, not, you see, the thing about it is, right? I don't know how true that statement about everyone who has faced nothing but pain and suffering is dangerous. It's not necessarily true. Different people choose to behave differently. I know several people who have grown up in a very painful and suffered quite a lot in their lives, but they chose to walk the path of being good and actually, once they came out of that, able to help other people. And other people, the same pain and suffering, same situation, decided to inflict pain and suffering on other people and continue the cycle. So it depends. Again, the interesting thing about human beings is, for the same scenario and same situation, a human being can choose, and choice is a very important thing, to move in a different direction. And similarly, someone could be, their own life, people have been speaking good about them, and they're humble people. And as a result of that, they choose to, to do the same to other people. And other people choose to receive that, but not necessarily to behave that way. So, it comes down to the individual and the choices they choose to effectively do in their lives. Dave Ethan says, I don't believe love can be capable of bringing out destruction, Trent. Again, I absolutely agree with you there, Dave Ethan. I don't think ultimately, now destruction might happen in the process of it, and love destroys, undesirable attributes in people, right? So love is destructive. I'm not saying it daily, but bring out destruction. I don't think so. I don't think so. Ultimately, love is the canvas under which everything exists, and therefore, to say that it would destroy, I just don't believe that, because love is what we are existing by. We exist because of love. Literally everything that exists, is because of love. That attribute, so I think ultimately love is a good thing. I don't think ultimately love will, bring destruction. Ultimately, Dave Ethan I think Dave Ethan's correct in that respect, and it's just my perspective. That's my idea, my understanding of love. TNJ says, I guess if it ain't true, it ain't love. Exactly. Love and truth go hand in hand. That's another thing. I absolutely agree with you. Love and truth. Now, sometimes we keep the truth from other people because we know that if they react to that truth at the point in time, ultimately we have to tell them the truth. And so certain times we just withhold certain information from people, or sometimes, because we care about certain people, we just don't bother to pursue certain things we see in them. But I don't think that necessarily that love and truth are mutually exclusive. I think truth and love are, they're sort of, I think they are pretty much very similar things. But I'm not going to just speak a truth callously to someone, knowing I will hurt them. I'm probably withhold that information for a period of time until that person is better ready and prepared to face that. And I can see that. So, you know, you have to be selective in how you say things as well. The manner in which you say that truth also is important, I think. D&J Lost Informed. Are you dissecting this from a theological standpoint? First time watching. Not many people dig this deep into BVS. No, I'm not just specifically speaking from a theological standpoint. That's the thing about me. You know, these words and these categories, I'm not really being a fan of categories and words. I understand you being more specific, but I'm not necessarily speaking it from a theological standpoint. It's more from a humanistic standpoint, from humanism. I know that some people, again, I'm choosing humanism because a lot more of my listeners have diverse, religious and political standpoints and views. So I decided to come from a standpoint of humanism. I'm not necessarily a strong advocate for humanism, but I have to use it through humanism in this point in time because I believe it will catch a wider span of people. There are certain things about humanism I totally do not believe. Okay. But at the same point in time, I think coming from a human perspective, using the human lens, you know, because I'm a human as well, I think I decided to choose humanism to speak about this movie because I think that people can relate to it more through that lens. So I'm not necessarily coming from a theological standpoint, even though I have used theology and I even open my I actually open every video from a theological standpoint. I'm generally approaching it from a humanistic standpoint, but I have extended humanism to embrace the theology that I actually believe. So that's how I'm actually approaching this video. D&J Lost and Found. You're Christian, probably from a Christocentric background. And so I assume that this is why you're asking me that question, which is awesome as well. T&J Ayala, Lex seems to want to enlighten the world in his own way about Superman. I believe that Lex, like I said, the feeling of powerlessness is something that different people react to differently. And until we come to the understanding that we are not, each individual is not the center of power, we usually view the world through our own eyes, and we very rarely step back and decide to view the world through eyes of other people through our eyes. Do you understand what I'm saying? Because you can't view the world any way else but through your own eyes. But to try to entertain the logic or the understanding that other people are also seeing the world, and not only other people, but other entities are seeing the world. That includes living things, whether they be plants or animals or whatever they are, that they also have a view and a perspective of the world that we don't always factor in, and then taking it further and saying that there may be other beings or other types of existence that also experience the world, and that even the inanimate objects, rocks and stones, you remember Jesus saying, you know, the rocks and stones will cry out, that they actually may be also experiencing the world, even though they are not considered alive. And so it's these kinds of understandings that helps us to open our perspective on things and see it from different perspectives, even though obviously they are not different perspectives. It's just a widened perspective we have of the world, considering other perspectives of the world. I hope that you understand everything I just said, because it's, you know, I'm basically saying in a nutshell, because I'm sounding too intellectual right at this point in time, I'll keep it simple. So what I'm saying is my view of the world is not the only view in the world, and that there are other views in the world. And for me to open my mind to that helps me to see the world much more like what it is. So that's the simple way of putting it. Trent Osborne says, I actually chose my words. Love wasn't the right wording in my statement. I actually agree with Dave Ethan as well. I understand where you were coming from, Trent Osborne. I believe you were basically, I just kind of being very specific, but yes, you were basically saying that, you know, with good intent, trying to treat people well all the time, those people who are treated well, at times it could be destructive. So I understand where you were coming from. It's again based on their choices, but yes, you're saying that in that case, treating people with care and love can sometimes lead to actually destroying them or making them worse, because the way how you went about doing it didn't factor in that these people need to also earn, to learn how to earn, or to actually learn that their actions, regardless of what they uh, are not always good. And you need to point out that part of love is to point out, the errors in people. So I get where you're coming from. D&J, DJ Lost and Found says, thanks for the clarification. Shout out to you, by the way, DJ Lost and Found. Nice. Thank you for visiting the channel. And TNJ Ayala says, hence idol worship trend. Yes, pretty much what some people are doing with Donald Trump right now. They're not calling him out on what he does things. Well, they're rarely calling him out on things where he goes wrong. All right. But by the way, he has done a couple good things. Okay, let's not just look at him through a negative lens. Again, open your perspective. He's done a couple good things, I must say. And it's important for us to always speak about not just the bad in people, but also the good that they have done. All right. He's done a couple good things. I'll point them out sometime. It's always good to have a balanced perspective of things. And a balanced perspective doesn't mean, I agree with you here and I agree with you here, therefore I'm balanced. That is not necessarily a balanced perspective, okay? Sometimes you have to totally disagree with people. Like, no, I don't agree with you there. And I agree with parts of what you said, but I don't think the truth is either what you guys are saying, or sometimes it's just, I agree with this person. I wholeheartedly agree with this person. Okay. All right, let's keep it moving. I'm going back to the video, but this is the discussions I wanted to have on these movies, and I'm glad I'm having it with you guys. This is just wonderful. Right. So, like I said, books and knowledge is power, but I am no. So he is in the same boat as Bruce Wayne. Bruce Wayne feels powerless. And guess what? Lex Luthor also feels powerless. He's got all this power. He's probably one of the most influential men in Metropolis, and yet he's not the most powerful. And he's used his power to do a lot of good things in Metropolis. He's helped to rebuild Metropolis after the Ground Zero event. He's here in a book fundraiser for a library. He's a philanthropist. He's doing a lot of good things, but he feels powerless. And the person he hates so much, like a lot of people hate Donald Trump right now, is Superman. For him, Superman's Donald Trump. Because, and you guys may think of this as fickle, but it's not. It's because he's not the guy calling the shots no more. I was the guy calling the shots in the background. I'm not doing it no more. But I should. It's my right. I'm the smartest guy here. I worked hard. I studied hard. I should be the dude. Huh? It's called jealousy. It's called envy. So this is what's driving him. Now, Bruce Wayne, he's driven by fear because he's a victim. Lex Luthor is driven more because he was the puppet master. He was the guy moving the chess pieces on the board. He was the guy with the power that laws and rules didn't apply to. But all of a sudden, his comfy position, where he's still doing good, don't get me wrong, he's not just a completely bad guy. Lex is not just a bad guy. No. No, he's doing a lot of good things. In the background, he's having fun. He's having fun because he's getting to do things with the government as well. So he's having fun with all his little toys. And then Superman shows up. He hates Superman because this guy didn't earn that as far as he's concerned. Now I'm second fiddle. He didn't earn that. He's not smart. What's he doing there? Huh? Donald Trump's not smart for a lot of smart people, right? He's a slap in the face to smart people, right? What's he doing there? He's Donald Trump. Superman's Donald Trump to Lex Luthor. Now you can identify with the guy. Let's go there, folks. Let's go there because we need to. A lot of you guys probably rethinking it, rethinking right now. What did I do that was unfair? How did I misjudge people? It's all about judging people, but all of us judge people based on our experiences. What's happening to us? Sometimes we take things personal, and Lex Luthor took Superman personal. This guy had too much power, and he's not going according to the book. So I got to embellish it a little bit. Let me guide the story along. And we've seen people in the media sometimes unfairly attack Donald Trump's children or his wife or even him unfairly. And we have to call it out for what it is. I'm not saying the media is always wrong and they're always unfair, but I'm just saying. Because certain people in the background are puppet masters are puppeteering that. And what did Lex Luthor do? Same thing. He manipulated the media, which was by and large tremendously a character in this movie. We got a lot of information through the media in this movie. God, there's so many other characters in this movie that we haven't talked about. The military is a character in this movie. The people are characters in this movie. People of the world are characters in this movie. The first responders was a character in this movie. We have first responders both in Man of Steel, and we had first responders in Batman v Superman. They were characters in this movie, right? Then we had the governments, which were characters in this movie. Did you notice how many players were in this movie? Okay. Then we had our protagonists, and then we had our antagonists. This movie was filled with a number of characters emulating the real world we live in and the complexities of it and the debate of it. But back to Lex Luthor. So Lex Luthor is you and me. And that's where it came to be a slap in the face, because I was, things that are blatantly obvious sometimes, we tend to victimize those things. We immediately start to attack. And it becomes the object of our hate. That's what Lex Luthor did. And that was a slap in my face. I took it and I said, wow, I got a long ways to go in this journey as a Christian. I have a long ways to go. When we have to pick scapegoats and piñata people a lot and attack them relentlessly to fuel our hate, what we're actually doing is not productive. We're not helping anyone. We're just fueling hate. Let me see what you guys are saying in the chat section, because I have so much more to say. TNJ Alice says, what is the opposite of an idol? An ideal. The opposite of idol is ideal. And yes, you can worship ideals, and sometimes you can actually worship ideals and make them idols, but then you will not really be in the essence of the ideal. Take, for instance, generosity. If you beat your chest and say, I'm a very generous person, you just corrupted generosity. Humility. If you have to beat your chest and say, I'm very humble, then you've just destroyed. You just destroyed humility. You understand? But if you worship humility and you serve humility, you'll be humble. You'll be humble. If you worship generosity and you serve generosity, you'll be generous. And so on. Which is why the Bible says, if you say, I have no sin, you just sinned. It's beautiful, isn't it? You don't waste your time saying those things. You don't ever point to yourself. It's all about being selfless in the end and holding on to attributes that will help others. As weird as it sounds, others come first. Yes, you still have to look out for yourself as you look out for others, but at the end, others come first. That's basically it. You share yourself with others. That's the way to say it. And that's how you love yourself. Let's keep it moving. DJ Lost and Found says the opposite of an idol may be the person we deliberately look down upon. Interesting. The overlooked and abused, in my opinion. So you're thinking of an idol as an actual person. In terms of people, that's interesting. But you know, you can idolize people who have been overlooked and abused. That you're really serving a notion instead of it's so complicated. But to simplify it, you can worship a scenario. You could start worshiping overlooked and abused people. You could actually make them an idol. As strange as it sounds, you're serving them, yes, but now you start to worship them. You start to worship that condition. You start to wish you were in that condition, and so on. It's weird, but that's the best way. You know, like sometimes rich people say, "Man, I wish I was just poor. I wish I had to struggle." You know, so I can't be worshipped. I think it's not so much the individuals as I think it is the ideals, which are important. And when you worship an ideal, you never vocalize the ideal. You just show it. And I believe that in its pure essence, I think is the opposite of an ideal, in my opinion. I think idols are physical things. They're things that are visible. Ideals are not visible, but yet they are felt. And so I think if you ask me, qualities and ideals and attributes, I think that's why I always talk. That's why, you know, I don't really come from a theological background for a particular reason, even though I bring up a lot of theological truths. But God didn't want us to worship idols for one very important reason. God is qualities, attributes, ideals. God's not trying to be visible to you like with an actual form, because he's actually working. He's not even a he. It's these forms and these attributes that drive the world. That's why I said love drives the world. You can't pinpoint love into some particular structure, you know what I mean? A physical structure or physical form, but it's there nonetheless. And to me, that's what God is. And so that's just the simplicity, the beauty of the thing. You know, atheists weren't that wrong. They just didn't understand that it's these attributes that are important. They always spoke about, you know, God's not this physical form. Now, I'm not saying God's not a physical form in another dimension, or he can't be in a physical form. I'm not saying that at all. But I'm saying the essence of what God is these qualities. That's the essence of God. That's the essence of heaven. You understand what I'm saying? Because Jesus came in a form, right? But that's not what Jesus is trying to point us to. The image and likeness of God is these qualities. And they can transform so much. And to me, that's the most important thing. That's why I said, you know, humanism limits us. Humanism is a very limiting word. Even universalism is a very limiting word, okay? Multiversalism is a limiting word, all right? But at the same point in time, not trying to be too heady and intellectual here, it's very important to see how these simple, foolish things like love and joy and peace and togetherness and community and that kind of stuff, these simple, foolish little things are actually so important. So important. More important than a lot of things we think are important. Trent Osborne says the world is very complicated, as anything and anyone can become anything. Someone who is known for horrible things and looked down upon can become someone you admire. Exactly. In fact, the most abhorrent person in the world can do something so beautiful, even though they still are going to continue to do horrible, abhorrent things. That's the complication of humanity. That to one set of people, they may never see that side of the person. And so that's the beauty of it all. T.N.J. Alice says, in the Bible, the abomination of desolation seems to be described as a false idol. Yes. I'm going to say something that sounds anti-Semitic, but I have to go there since you're talking about this subject. The abomination of desolation, my friend T.N.J. Allah, this is going to sound terrible, but is the Jewish nation believing they are the chosen ones without living as if they are the chosen ones? That was the abomination of desolation. In fact, in the book of Revelation, if you ever go to the book of Revelation, now, not all Jews, I'm not saying all Jews are that. I'm just saying, in the book of Revelation, there is something else that is said here. Let me get to it. Since she pointed that out, I just wanted to add something to that. Ah, here it is. Oh my God, this is beautiful. This is beautiful. You see, there's so many metaphors in the Bible, my friends. And then you compare the Old Testament to the New Testament. It's oh my God. The Bible is an awesome book, in my opinion. The Bible is an awesome book. And then, Zack Snyder kind of emulates what the Bible does. He gives a visual style. So so anyway, let me show you something here. So why I said the Jewish peoples who have moved away from God, but they still think they're chosen of God, because they think it's about genealogy and not about spirituality. Again, I am being as humanistic as I possibly can, while at the same time I've just broken the bounds of humanism and I've gone into spirituality for a minute. But humanism cannot work without spirituality. And spirituality, all spirit means is the invisible, that which is effective but invisible. So when I talk about love, that's a spiritual thing. You understand? So, but you cannot have humanism if you don't have these attributes. And so that's why I can cross over into spirituality for a minute. So boy, this is going to take forever, guys. I don't know how I'm going to finish this video, because I haven't even started to scratch the surface of this movie. In Revelation chapter 2, it says this. Okay, my God. You ready for this? I hope you guys are ready for this, because like I said, the abomination of desolation has to do with a mindset. Still here today. It says this, Revelation chapter 2. We'll read verses 8 all the way down to verse 11. It says, unto the angel of the church of Smyrna. Angel just means messenger. All right. So I'm giving this to a person who's going to go to the church of Smyrna. These things said the first and the last, which was dead and is alive. I know your works and tribulation and poverty, but you are rich. And I know the blasphemy of them which say they are Jews. Listen carefully. And are not, but are of the synagogue of Satan. Let me say it again. I know the blasphemy of them which say they are Jews and are not, but are of the synagogue of Satan. This is the people of the Jewish nation, leaders of the Jewish nation, who were dedicated to destroying the disciples and the apostles of Jesus Christ, because they wanted to bury the fact. It's something I was talking to a lady on Facebook, and she was saying how, the Quran says that Jesus didn't die and that he went to heaven and he wasn't crucified. And I was telling her, no, you misunderstood the transcript. The transcript was actually saying, if you go and read it in context, that the Jews said that he was crucified and he died. But in fact, he was raised by God. And in fact, he was not. In fact, the way how they say it, that he was crucified and that he died, that is not true. but in fact, he was raised and went back up to heaven. And in the next verse, it talks about his death. And so people misunderstand and misrepresent the Quran time and time again. Time and time again. And if you haven't read the Quran, or if you haven't read excerpts from the Quran that give proper context to what is being said, you too would say the same foolishness. Now, she's a Christian, but she's a partisan Christian. She has never taken time to read the Quran, to read the context of these things. And it's funny because if I were to speak about Muslims, I believe that Muslims are very similar in many ways to certain Christians. All right, I come from a background being a Seventh-day Adventist. Today is Saturday. It is the seventh day of the week, and it's considered by Seventh-day Adventists as the Sabbath. And the Quran, just a couple verses before, said how they desecrated the Sabbath. That's right. The Quran speaks about the Sabbath too. That's right. And it's funny because when I talk about these things, it's ironic because people want to know, well, why do Muslims become Christians or they believe in Jesus? It's because Isa, which is Jesus, is mentioned in the Quran more than any other character in the Quran. Secondly, the Quran has never put down Jesus Christ. Never. It has exalted him. It has spoken to him as the prophet. He's been spoken of as the prophet, not just a prophet, the prophet. He's been spoken of as the first apostle. Okay. He's been spoken of as the Messiah, literally. He's been called the Messiah. Yes, there are many messiahs, but he's been referred to in the Quran specifically by the Prophet Muhammad as the Messiah. Yes. Okay. And yes, he was crucified, he died, and he was raised again. That the Quran actually speaks about. And if you go and you listen to certain scholars, Muslim scholars, you will hear them speak about this. All right. Islam is very much, very, very similar to Christianity. It just that certain practices that Islam has actually are much more what the earlier Christians were doing. So, you know, it's funny. Yes, we have some wackos and we have some extremists in Islam that take everything literally. But for those people who truly follow the way of Islam, they're more Christian than Christians sometimes. I'm just saying. So you guys would know. All right. And some of the practices they maintained that the Jewish people had. OK, that's just a point to say this. To say that, you know, the Jews that rejected Jesus caused the abomination of the desolation. That's what the abomination of the desolation is. Yes. Wow. T&J Alley, you're going deep, brother. You're going deep now. We're going places right now. T&J Alley says, I always thought of something like a Frankenstein moment or a Garden of Eden event. Interesting. Interesting. It's more of a metaphor. Now, it can be a physical thing as well, because the abomination of desolation was where the Roman Empire, or was it the Greek? I think it's the Roman Empire went into Jerusalem and literally knocked down the temple. Okay, the temple was, you know, destroyed. So there was that too. It was an actual event in history. T&J Ellis says, tempted towards knowledge than destruction. Okay, yes. And T&J Ellis says, abomination of desolation in a literal sense is doomsday in BVS. Oh, yeah, he was called the abomination, the desolation without name. Yes, absolutely. In fact, literally in BVS, they called him, doomsday is literally called the abomination of desolation. That is absolutely correct. Also in the Incredible Hulk, we had abomination, who was the abomination of desolation as well. It's a biblical theme, a biblical event that is spoken about metaphorically and also literally. Yes, that is absolutely correct. All right. Also, the abomination of desolation is also when Jesus died and the most holy place was ripped and separated from the holy. The abomination of desolation also happened then as well. So there are a number of different, like I said, you know, the nice thing about Bible and me reading the Bible is there's multiple meanings to the same damn thing. And Zack Snyder does that himself. He likes to double speak. All right, so let me go back to what I was talking about. Woo, man, we got into some deep stuff, and I ain't even started to talk about what I needed to talk about yet. We are a long ways off from the end. My Lord, let's see how we can do this. Anyway, so we're talking about power. And of course, Vikram Gandhi is an actual person. And he said 90% of people believe in a higher power, and every religion believes in some kind of messianic figure. And he goes on to say a higher power is the important thing here when we're talking about power. He goes on to say that this higher power, this messianic figure, is he subject to our rules? Is that how it works? Now, we keep on thinking that he has to be under our rules, and we have to have a paradigm shift beyond politics. That's what he said. Now, what's very interesting about this, and again, this is very interesting, is that he absolutely said 100% correct statement that everybody believes there's something greater than themselves. All right, they may not be Christian or religious, okay, but everyone, atheists included, believe there's something bigger than myself, right? I'm not the center of the universe. I am not the be all and end all. So that everybody believes in a higher power. So it's very interesting that he poses this point about power. Because this person's at a higher power, why do we keep on trying to judge him on our level, on our power level? So he's talking based on power. He should be free to do certain things, which we consider in our laws to be something that's important to us. Like, for instance, he should be able to go anywhere and save people. Why is it that we think that he's he's illegally entering territory, like illegal immigration? He would be considered an illegal immigrant, if he was to just kind of go into Mexico and save that girl on the Day of the Dead, right? That's illegal. You're supposed to go through the port of entry, right? Or at least call up the governance of Mexico and let him know first. Does Superman have the time for that? Does he really? Does he? I'm just saying. So he's saying with this person with that kind of power, we can't just judge him how we would judge each other as human beings, and we have to go beyond politics. So that's his argument, which I thought was a very good one, by the way, and it's a positive one. All right, let's move on to yet another statement, which is paradoxical. It's ironic, but it's true. It's a true statement. Is it really surprising that the most powerful man in the world would be a figure of controversy? This is ironical because in almost every Superman film we have seen so far, this truth has never been expressed. It is only in these 2 Superman movies we've seen so far that this truth is truly expressed. And this is true. Any one human who has a lot of power, I don't care who they are, invites controversy because they're going to implement that power. And we have rules and we have regulations and we have laws. And this person is going to contravene 1, 2, or several of them in doing good, which Superman does. And in fact, Senator Finch actually vocalizes that when she's speaking to Charlie Rose, who's again another real media person, up to recently, for the allegations of sexual harassment, which again, I don't know how far to the extent really those things were with Charlie Rose and how far he was in those things, but nonetheless, it's frowned upon. So, and again, I'm not going to even try to make excuses for it. But the point is, Senator Finch says to Charlie Rose, who's Charlie Rose in the movie, by the way, she says to him, all of these state-level interventions should give us all pause. That's what she says. And once again, I understand why she would say that, because this person is infringing on, first of all, the actual country's reaction to such a threat. 2, that he is crossing boundaries into other territories which have different legal frameworks and governance without notifying these governments. Remember, these places have military and stuff. Now, Superman can fly very, very, very fast, faster than all the military and all those people, so they can't detect him. But that's kind of a little bit disturbing as well, because he can do whatever he wants and say it's under the guise of helping people. And so that's why she says that these state-level interventions, especially in light of the desert intervention that happened where the witness though giving fault witness at the time, the witness said some very troubling things, which, Senator Fisher had to take a state level and say, he's responsible for this act, right? So I'm saying again, that's why she was saying these things. She said, we were all caught up in what Superman could do, but we never thought about what he's capable of doing, right? And so again, power is on highlighted here, but this time power in terms of, yes, the irony is he's the most powerful man in the world, and the irony is he is a controversial figure, which was never shown in any Superman movie, which is what makes BVS so realistic and real, because I don't care who you are. Infinity War just came out. Very popular movie, but controversial for some people, right? Controversial because people like myself thought it was a bunch of crap. Other people thought it was good. So that makes it controversial. All right. In the real world, there's always controversy, and you don't have to be a bad guy to have a different opinion from someone else. Right. So Charlie Rose is saying, is that really surprising, though, that he's a figure of controversy? He is the most powerful guy. Right. And here's some of that controversy. Some people love Superman. I love Superman. Right. You see it. You see the first responders, how they behave. You see how the woman in the apartment behaved. They love Superman. They defend Superman. They love Batman. They defend Batman. And then you have other people who say he's not a hero. Right. And there are other people who are saying, get out of here, you alien, and stuff like that. Right. So at the end of the day, he's a figure of controversy. And here is one other part of controversy. Again, Superman's power. Now, Bruce Wayne takes it to the extreme extent. Kind of reminds me of what is happening in America, where right now the population, within a couple of years, if it continues the way it's going, the white people are going to become a minority in the United States of America. And some people, different people react to it differently. Some people show concern, and other people, they literally take this extreme position, like how Bruce Wayne does. So Bruce Wayne looking at Alfred. Alfred says, but he says, to Bruce Wayne, when Bruce Wayne says, I'm going to, he says, Bruce Wayne says, I'm going to use the kryptonite to attack Superman. So Alfred says, you're going to go to war? And Bruce Wayne says, he has the power to wipe out the entire human race. And if there is even a 1% chance that he is our enemy, we have to take it as an absolute certainty, and we have to destroy him. Based on his potential and the fact that he may even attack us, we have to stop him. We have to destroy him now. So Bruce is taking an extreme position, which Alfred hears. So first, Bruce is very brutal. And Alfred said he's becoming cruel. And now Bruce has come to the point. He'd been plotting and planning, and he never let Alfred know what his plans were because he knew Alfred would want to stop him. He was planning to kill Superman all along. That's a trip, isn't it? Remember, Bruce feels powerless. And he's planning to murder Superman. That's what Bruce is planning. Oh my God. That is pretty dark when you think about it. All right. This guy hates Superman. He's made up his mind. He's got to go. When he heard that there was kryptonite around, Lex Luthor found kryptonite, he had already made up his mind. He's going to kill Superman with that kryptonite. Never told Alfred because he knew Alfred would not agree with it. And Alfred vehemently says, he is not our enemy. He said, not today. Dude said, not today. He was not going to have it. And Alfred's like, this mother, what is wrong with you, boy? But he's his boss, so he can't, he gives it, Alfred, you're fired. So Alfred has to hang in there with him. And that's why people who make extreme statements like Donald Trump, you need to have people near them still. because somehow they can influence these people. They don't do more craziness. And Alfred stuck with him. He stuck with him. Didn't agree with him, but he stuck with him because he felt his presence there would somehow help Bruce to snap to it and come out of the madness that he's in. He's gone into madness. And you can see the rage and the hate fueled in Bruce's face. Can't you see it? And you and I are guilty of that. We have done this before. We've blindly hated people. They ticked us off, and then we started fueling off of the hate and rage. How do we get them back? It's a human condition. Right? Let me see what you guys are saying here. I love this movie because it really brought human aspects of ourselves to the forefront. TNJL says the creation which shouldn't have been created, which causes destruction and desolation. There you go. Yep, that is true. That is true, TNJL. Let me get back to what we're talking about here. So that's what Bruce is down this dark pathway. He's looking to murder another human being. But how many of us have sought to murder another human being? Maybe not physically, but we wanted to get them back and we wanted them to feel the pain. How many of us? How many of us want Donald Trump to feel pain? We hope he gets persecuted to the highest extent of the law. I hope he suffers in some federal prison somewhere. I'm just trying to get you guys to understand hate is not the way to go, which is why Dave Ethan, shout out to you, Dave Ethan. When people said they hate Justice League, I said, no. You got to stop that. Now, you may hate it. Nothing's wrong with that. But now you're talking about it in a negative way. And you're looking to bash it at every turn. That's dangerous. Because you're looking to kill it. And some people try to kill it at the box office, right? Hate is never the way to go. You can just, okay, you can hate things which are deserve to be hate, like hating hate and hating, selfishness or hating, principles which are terrible. And you want to see those die. There's nothing wrong with that. But when it comes to hating people or things or places which can be good or can be bad, that's not right. It's not a way to go. It tears things down. And Doomsday is an agent of hate. And what hate brings mostly? Destruction. This was a beautiful conversation where Senator Finch talks about power again and the power of Superman. And she continues by saying, notice her views are more balanced, right? Bruce's is on the deep end because it's fueled by hate and rage and stuff. But if you look at Senator Finch's statements, and if you look at, okay, so Bruce and Lex Luthor, they're fueled off of hate and rage and stuff. Senator Finch, on the other hand, she's trying to keep it balanced, right? It's about a discussion. And her opinions can change. And she says the world needs to know what he stands for. How far will he take his power? Does he act by our will or by his own? These are beautiful statements. And let me tell you why they're beautiful. She's expressing very much, is he using his power for our interest? Does he care really about us? Or does he care about, is he in love with how much he can do for us? So is he in love with how much he can do for us? Or does he really love us and want to hear what we want and what we need? So that's why she invited Superman to come down to the hearing, to hear the victims and people and hear another side of the equation. Now, like I said before, the media is a character in this movie. So you'll notice that the media is portraying this. It's being carried across via media to a media house, which in this case is the Daily Planet, which I found very, it's just so interesting, man. I just love it. I love the movie. So, the media is actively involved in this movie. And obviously, you see the media is basically broadcasting a lot of the statements I just made. And so it's very interesting that she says this, and Clark actually receives this. He's hearing this. Superman's actually listening to her as well, which I find very interesting because, it's the irony again. There's a lot of irony here that, People with power, they don't listen to anyone. But actually, people with power, generally in governance especially, they're usually the people listening a lot. They listen the most. And they're humble enough to listen as much as they can. And it's important to be able to listen, folks. And so you see Clark here listening. Because the fear by Senator Finch is, you know, this guy will fall in love with helping people, but not fall in love with the people he's helping. And he's going to take his power to another level. And a lot of people get corrupted that way. I know the former prime minister that we had who died, he did so much good for our country. And then he got in love with the power he had to be able to help other people. And he felt he was above the law. He started to corrupt himself, and he found himself involved in corruptible practices. And so Senator Finch is really expressing a real concern. That is someone who falls in love with the idea of helping other people, but not in love with the people. And that fuels his help. And that means you'll either be listening to the people, really truly listening to their heart and trying to satisfy their needs that way, and where possible for them to satisfy their own needs, versus thinking that, oh yeah, I need to do this. And you're not really listening to what the needs of the people are, but you're in love with helping them, that you're helping them however you feel like helping them. And it's interesting because Superman talks about helping the world on his own terms. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean by his own will, but nonetheless, by his own terms. That was said in Man of Steel. So she really is expressing a real concern about Superman, because Superman has been contravening laws and stuff to be able to help people. So that's why she's roping him in, and she wants him to be disciplined and understand there are laws in different countries. And if you're going to help mankind, you really say you want to help us, then you need to conform to our laws as much as you can and inform us of what you're doing. And therefore, as she said, abide by the consent of the ruled. Right? And you could see Superman willing to do that because he went down to Capitol Hill to listen. And she pulled out the belt, boy, and she started beating him. She let him know from the get-go, hey, you need to fall in line, did you? It's pretty funny. So, yeah. So I thought that this is very interesting. All right, how we view people with power. All of us view people with power that way because all of us are afraid that human beings would do that. Okay, we talked about Lex Luthor's statement there already. So let's talk about the last statement, which is what Lex Luthor says. And this is a statement I think a lot of atheists will actually agree with. They may not know it. They may not cognitively know it. But this is a statement that a lot of atheists actually agree with. If there is a God, and he's all powerful, he cannot be all good. And let me explain to you very simply how atheists will argue this. So you're saying there's a God. Then why are bad things happening to innocent people in the world? God can't be all good. Right? So a lot of atheists on the whole will wholeheartedly agree with Lex Luthor right now. And then he goes on to say, if God is all good, he cannot be all powerful. Okay, so you're saying God is good. Okay, he's good, but he's not all powerful because some people are suffering in this world. He's limited. And then he goes on to extrapolate, neither can you be, Kal-El. And again, power is used here, and it shows the limits of power. It shows the limits of power. Either all power is not all good, which is a limit, or the power to do good is not all effective. It cannot happen all over, which is another limit. And if you think about that truth, a lot of people believe that. Even people who say they believe in God. Think about it. I'll give you a chance to discuss it. All right, let's go back to the chat section for a minute. So TNJ Alice says ghosts are usually used in stories of revenge. BVS in a lot of ways reflects the story of Camelot. Aha. You remember the movie Excalibur? Zack Snyder actually built BVS with Chris Terrio off of Excalibur, which has to do with Camelot. So you're again, once again, 100% correct. Damian Anton Vincent says, Anson, you have made me love this movie along with the other Zack Snyder movies even more. You should do an analysis of Sucker Punch in 300. I look forward to it. Woo! You want me to go Sucker Punch, man? Sucker Punch is deep. That's deep. That's a hard one to do because it'll take me forever to do. Sucker Punch is a wonderful, it's an underappreciated film. That's a deep film. 300 is mythical, but I wouldn't say it's as deep. But Sucker Punch, that'll take me forever, bro. Forever to break down. That's a movie that's about human nature, especially somebody who's being oppressed human nature. And a lot of us have the feeling that we're being oppressed, right? So Sucker Punch, and the name of the film is ironical because the film is not about the oppressed person getting sucker punched. It's actually the oppressed person sucker punching the oppressor. Geez, Zack Snyder, man. Anyway, and he wrote that one. So no, Sucker Punch is gonna be that's one that I will take some time to unpack, brother. Trent Osborne, no enemy exists until we choose to make them one. After 9/11, our country created an enemy out of virtually the entire Middle East. Interesting. Humanity creates virtually every enemy it ends up with. True. That is true. I would say this. I'm not going to be friends with hatred. Trent Osborne. I choose not to be friends with hatred. I choose not to be friends with fascism. I choose not to be friends and bed allies with lies. Yes, it is a choice to choose who your enemy is. However, it doesn't mean that in reality, some of the people you choose to be your friends are not in actuality your enemies. I'll go biblical on you guys. Judas was a friend of Jesus. Jesus considered him his friend. He considered him his disciple. He had him as one of his own. And yet he had to say to him, there's a devil among us. And so Judas considered Jesus his enemy. No. Judas didn't consider Jesus his enemy. Sorry, let me rephrase that. Judas saw an opportunity to make money off of Jesus. And his actions made him an enemy of Jesus. Again, ignorance is not innocence. He was ignorant of the fact that Jesus would not save himself when the time came. But he was not ignorant, he was not innocent, of betraying him. Judas killed himself because he realized that he had delivered the Christ into the hands of his enemies. Judas was an enemy of Christ, not because of him fully understanding what he was about to do, but because of what he did. And this just proves the point that ignorance is not innocence. But yes, I do agree with you 100% that we choose who our enemies and our allies are, whether they are truly our enemies or allies. Trent Officer says a fear and hatred of something not understood, and a fear and a paranoia of what one can do causes almost every conflict one can imagine. Absolutely. Which is why wisdom is important. And I don't always do the wisest of things, but you are absolutely correct there, Trent Osborne. Now, let me just say that tomorrow I will not be able to do anything on the DCE. I'll have to go work tomorrow. Okay. But this will have to do because this has been a ridiculously long video. I haven't even finished everything. I don't know how I'm gonna finish this video. I'm gonna have to speed it up. But I just want to spend time on these particular things. Damien Anton says, I can wait. Oh, you can't wait. Okay, cool. Trent Osborne says, suffering is necessary to a world. It allows us to see good in things. Criticism of something is what drives us to defend something. Through pain and loss, we learn the value of joy in life. I would say it this way, Trent Osborne. I would say it this way. We have suffering in this world. It's something that's unavoidable. And you can choose for suffering to bring forth something negative. You can choose the path of negativity, or you can choose to endure the suffering and then bring out something positive from it. Like Lewis Lane said in Justice League, through pain and loss, we learn the value of joy and life. And so it's very true. We can take lemons and make lemonade with them. Lemons are sour, bitter things, but they can be used for good. I always think of Suicide Squad. Suicide Squad pretty much epitomizes the fact that we can take some very, very bad people and do some good with them. And that's pretty much the same thing. The very horrific, horrendous situations, you can choose to take the knowledge of those situations and create something good out of it. Trent Osborne says, as one of my favorite songs states, you can't quit until you try. You can't understand the value of truth until you lie. You can't understand the value of breathing until you choke the first time. More, you can be a reflective person and look at other people's mistakes and learn the value from them. That's another way of doing it. So, you know, you may be lied on, and that's why you learn the value of truth. You know what I'm saying? You may be in a situation where someone can't breathe, and you learn the value of breathing. So it doesn't necessarily mean that it's something you have to do or it has to happen to you necessarily, Trent Osborne. I'm just thinking. But because it happened to you, you learn to appreciate these things more. You know, you've lied, you saw the consequences of lying, and therefore you realize why the truth is so valuable. Or you've been lied on, whatever. So, you know, the negative experiences can turn out to be positive things, but it doesn't necessarily mean that you have to lie to learn what truth is. I don't agree with that at all. I believe that, or to be lied on. A lot of times people just don't appreciate the things they have until they're gone. But you can learn to be thankful and live a life of being thankful. And therefore, as a result of that, you begin to appreciate things more and more. So, you know, I don't believe that bad things have to happen to somebody to be appreciative of the good they have or good things that happen. I believe that you know, you could have a very good life and never have experienced certain things that other people have experienced and still have empathy for them and listen to them. I think by us listening to other people, I think that's where we can actually learn a lot. And we don't necessarily have to experience the things those people have experienced to be able to put ourselves in the position they are as a human being to another human being. And to, in other words, I've never been sexually molested or raped. That doesn't mean that I can't listen to somebody who has been, empathize with them, sympathize with them, and want to do something about it. And so that's the, you know, because we are emotional beings and we can empathize and sympathize with other people, I believe that makes us appreciate the fact that we never been raped. We never had to go through that. And this other person may appreciate other virtues because they've been raped, etc. And we can learn from them. And that's where they can contribute something for us. And we can value those things as well. So I'm just saying, you know, I don't believe that bad things have to happen to you for you to value good things. But at the same time, I can understand when bad things happen to certain people, how they see the value in good things more. And they can contribute in much more effective ways, you know, because they've experienced the bad. So I can see both ways of what you're saying. I'm just saying that, you know, I don't believe that you have to lie to understand the truth, or you have to go through bad things. You know, you have to be out of breath or whatever, struggle to breathe, to appreciate breathing. Like for me, I was constipated for a very long period of time. I can do a proper bowel movement. And I appreciate you going to the toilet. I appreciate flatulating, you know what I mean? Because there was a time I couldn't do that. You know, I appreciate eating food on time. I appreciate getting night's sleep. You know, there was a time when I was insomniac. I couldn't sleep. Okay. Every time I rest my head down, you know, my heart would start beating very hard and palpitating. And then I lose breath for a minute, and then I can breathe again. So, you appreciate these things more because you've gone through all these, sufferings and whatever. But at the same time, it doesn't mean that, you have to go through those things to appreciate those. You understand what I'm saying? There's a lot of things we take for granted, right? Freedom to speak and so on. And so it's always good to be thankful and reflective and appreciative of these things. And it makes a big difference. TNJL says, on a slightly funny note, I tend to believe that Jesus is training in a hyperbolic time chamber for the end times, speeding towards us. I don't know. Hyperbolic time. You just said so much stuff right there. I have to actually unpack it. Hyperbolic time chamber for the end times, speeding towards us. Wow, it's interesting. I don't know what to say. You actually got me speechless there. I'm thinking about it. I gotta have to think that through, man. I can't really say. That's interesting. Training in a hyperbolic time chamber. It's a Dragon Ball Z reference. Wow. I don't know. Jesus exists in different dimensions. Some dimensions we don't even exist. We don't even tap into, So I really can't say. You decided to go use time, which is bent. It's interesting. Another thing I mean to say is that we start out so young and we're born understanding nothing we learn from others. And if they had no negative experiences, we would have nothing to learn. I don't know, man. I think of a million positive things you could learn. You know what I mean? Okay, see, let me tell you why. Man. A lot of times when we think of existence, Trent, we think of the positive and negative things in our existence. But who's to say and wants to say that we can't have a world where there's positive existence? And everything's positive. There's so much to learn in the world, period, that is positive, that you can't say that people have to have negative experiences for people to learn. You get what I'm saying? There's so much positive things out here that we don't even talk about. That's positive existence that, I can't see somebody not learning just purely positive things if they wanted to. I would say that maybe negative things. No, I can't even say that, because for every positive thing, there's a negative thing. So either way, if it is just purely negative existence, there's just like an enormous amount of negative things you can learn. If there's a purely positive existence, there's an enormous amount of positive things you can learn. So I really can't say that if you didn't have negative experiences, you wouldn't be able to learn, from those. You know what I'm saying? So I wouldn't use absolutes like that. I would say, because for me, I'm a Christian. I believe that at some point in time, there's only going to be good. There's not going to be nothing negative anymore. There's not going to be negative things. And I know for a fact, as a person, it's going to be boring as hell if I'm not learning nothing. And I truly believe I'll just be continuously learning about all kinds of things. And so for me, because I believe that to a certain degree, being in this realm is limiting. And I would love to be in an unlimited realm where, you just constantly are learning, constantly seeing new things. And that to me is just mind blowing. So I can't see that happening. Like for me, and then human beings working together. There's so many different permutations of how you can work together. I just can't see it. I just can't see it happening. I can't. I really can't. And as a creative person, where you create works of art and lots of positive things, and it's just infinite ways to do that, I just can't see myself not learning. It's almost impossible. Yeah, definitely a Dragon Ball Z reference. TJ says, look up the reference later if you want. Christ I am disciple. You can call me Anson. Yeah. Oh, it's cool. I've never really followed Dragon Ball Z that much. So yeah, I probably missed it because of that. And that's really cool though. I need to check it out. There's probably a joke there that I just totally missed it, which is terrible. um, so let me get back to this. We've been I don't even know how many hours we've been out here. We've been talking for some hours though, guys. So yeah, that was the last statement that Lex Luthor said, which is fundamentally true. All right, fundamentally true to a certain extent. Now a lot of say, "Oh, God is all powerful; He's all knowing." Yeah, but that's because God is not a He. God is a quality, and because of that, then uh, you can't really say that statement. Um, okay, so let me come out of this. So we went deep into what Dawn of Justice was speaking about concerning power. And again, it really comes back to you and me when we talk about power. And that's why I talk from a humanistic point of view, because I think it's the most practical way to go. You and I, we really determine we have that power in a small way to be able to really dictate and determine the future of things. It's how we use it. Do we use the power responsibly? Okay. And yes, any one person with power can become corrupted, and they usually do because they get caught up in the power. But at the same time, if we meet individuals who are exceedingly powerful, we should not be afraid of them and what they're doing, even Donald Trump. And we should not be consumed with hate. We must always look at things objectively. We must always look at things as how we can better something. What's this guy's name? I forgot his name right now. Vance. I think it's Vance is his name. He sometimes appears on CNN, and he's talking about, people being so divisive now that they're not working together. And he's looking for ways, common grounds in which they can work together to do positive things. I forgot what his full name is. The black gentleman with glasses. And he's right. We need to work together to do positive things that we can agree on. Let's look for agreement. You know how good and pleasant it is for brethren to dwell together in unity, right? And I read on Psalms 40 where it says, I waited patiently for the Lord, or goodness. And he inclined unto me and heard my cry. And he brought me up out of a horrible pit, out of the miry clay. This is what gets us out of the pit and the clay, guys. Goodness. And goodness is by trying to look for the good in people. Where do we agree? And let's work with that. We're going to do incredible things. That's where the power comes, guys. All right, let's move on to the next video. Like I said, this movie is ironical. And for me, one of the most relatable moments for me in Batman v Superman Dawn of Justice was a moment that made me actually cry. I started crying because I felt that, because this is what I strive to do. And when Superman fails, folks, when Superman fails in a movie, a lot of people hated the fact that Superman was failing in the movie. But when they call him emo Superman. But when Superman fails, it tells us anyone can fail. All right. And even the most wonderful aspirations can end in horrible disaster. And this movie, for me personally, because it's the story of my life almost, is summarized like that. I would say it like this. I genuinely try to inspire, to heal, to save, and to build up other people. And this disaster happens. And the way how the movie brought forth this moment wasn't in a sort of superficial, meaningless way, like how most superhero movies go. Oh yeah, I failed. I need to pick up myself. I need to pick up myself. And then somebody comes and pep talks them, and that's it, right? This movie dealt with it in a deeper, more meaningful way, dealing with the realism there. You come in good faith to best peacefully and humbly serve and help others, and things go horribly wrong, and you feel your failure. That is what that picture in front of me summarized. The look on Superman's face as he looks at Lois Lane. I failed you guys. I came down here to the Capitol building, not just to listen, but where possible, to serve you. to follow you in a peaceable manner. You see him open the little divide there and quietly move in. And he stands up to take his bitter medicine, to get a tongue lashing from Senator Finch. And he takes it. And he's there. He say, I'm here for you guys. I want to hear what you guys have to say. I'm here. And this incredibly disastrous and horrific tragedy happens. Why? I try my best. I do my best to try to make this place better. And this happens. How many of you guys can relate to that? How many of you can relate to you tried your best and you get vilified for it? You try your best and disaster happens. The worst possible thing that could possibly happen happens. Never have I ever seen that captured in that sort of emotional weight in a movie. He looks to Lewis like he looked to Lewis when he killed General Zod. And the very thing he's been fighting against since he killed General Zod has happened again. Think about that. Bruce Wayne felt powerless. And we were talking about power. Superman, the best in ourselves, the hero, feels powerless, hopeless. How many of you felt that way? And this makes people cry. It makes me cry because I know what it feels like to be in that position. I don't know how many people feel that way. Maybe you feel like it now. And to me, this is what I loved about the movie. It felt real to me. Because heroes are not always heroic in people's eyes. But the thing that really gets it is sometimes a hero doesn't feel like a hero in his own eyes. I could live with other people thinking I failed. I can't live with thinking I failed. How much is we're afraid of failure? How many of you are afraid of the worst possible scenario happening? Now, what do you do in that situation? Do you give up? Do you sink under the weight of it? Be their hero, Clark. Be their monument. Be whatever they want you to be. Or be none of it. You don't owe this world a thing. What are you going to do? You have to choose. Neo said in The Matrix, the problem is choice. You have to choose if this feeling you feel now of hopelessness, powerlessness, if that's going to prevent you from doing anything from this point forward, because it's not worth it. When I was defending Justice League, as that movie was assaulted by everybody, I remember some of you guys saying, why are you continuing onwards? It's because it's not about the outcome. It is about you and I doing something. It does make a difference. Even if the worst case scenario happens, Because after that worst case scenario, you still have a need for other people. Other people have a need still. People will still need to be helped. It doesn't matter what you call me. It doesn't matter what I think of myself. The need will still be there. People will still need to be inspired. People will still need to be healed. People will still need to be saved. People will still need to be built up. And that, my friends, is important. That's what makes this movie special. This incident here is not something to be taken lightly. This is the most awful thing that could ever possibly happen. An act of terror that is worse. It's the ultimate fear. In the United States of America, something would happen on Capitol Hill, a disaster on Capitol Hill, the center of the governance of the country. It's worse than something happening at the Twin Towers. It's an act of terror. And it happened with Superman present, and he did nothing. I want you to understand. This is not just a movie for me. This is my life. T.J. Ellis says, he says, after to Lewis, I'm afraid I wasn't looking. Yes, because he's devastated. He's devastated. He feels he could have done more. He felt he could do more. He's devastated. That thing destroyed him. Because I have all the power in the world. Right? The feeling of powerlessness was not just shared by Lex Luthor, by Bruce Wayne. It was also shared by Clark Joseph Kent. Notice I didn't say Kal-El. I'm speaking of the human part of him. Remember, this is humanism I'm coming from. Clark Joseph Kent. Lois Lane said to him, the symbol of hope means something. And he says, and this crushed a lot of people. A lot of people's hearts were crushed because this is reality. He said it did on my world. My world doesn't exist anymore. It's a crushing thing when your hope is crushed. You know, you ever watch a sport game and you're there with the team and the team is coming back and it's coming back and it's coming back, and the final minutes of the game and the team is almost there, and then a goal or something happens to them and their hopes are dashed. You know, some of us laugh about it, but it hurts, doesn't it? Your favorite team, and they fail. And what do? You blame the team because you're hurt. Because the hope was lost. Hopelessness. People don't like being hopeless. No one does. It's an unpleasant experience. But Zach chose to put that experience out there with Chris Terrio, with David Goyer, to put the unpleasantness in our face, to see it. And some of us will cry, some of us will get angry, some of us will want to turn off the TV and, that's not my Superman, emo Superman. We have different reactions to it. But in the end, it's potent, it's powerful, it's palpable. You feel it. It's real. And you feel uncomfortable seeing your hero, who you worship, in that position of powerlessness. But he doesn't turn cruel. Lex Luthor in his powerlessness is mean intentionally. Batman is cruel, brutal. But Superman, he retreats. He runs away from his destiny because Superman is unlike Bruce Wayne. He's unlike Lex Luthor. He saves people. He gets a kick out of saving people. Doesn't get a kick out of kicking people's ass and beating people down. No. Superman's different. He's all about preservation of life. He's all about saving people. And so he retreats from saving people. After he saves people from the building, nonetheless. And the attendant turns to him and says, "Thank you. I'll need some space." And he looks at him in an unflattering way. What is it when your hero suddenly is not your hero anymore? You outgrew him. He's not flattering anymore to you. What happens then? You see, Zach treated Superman like how we would treat our heroes. How do we treat our heroes? They're great heroes for a day, and we they make one mistake, or they're associated with something bad, and all of a sudden they're not our heroes no more. No. We malign them. We speak evil of them. Isn't that not so? Now, I'm not saying other comic book movies haven't done that. I know that The Dark Knight did that. And Nolan has something to do with this universe. He was a producer on this movie. But the point is, Superman. Nobody thinks Superman could be subject to that. It's an unrealistic thought. But people didn't go into the movie Batman v Superman to see Superman being treated like a unflatteringly. People are supposed to praise Superman. He's the hero to save the day. What happens when Superman can't save the day? What happens when Superman is associated with a disaster? Oh, that never happened to Superman. Not my Superman. Unrealistic. In a real world, so many Supermen have been chastised and blamed for things they didn't even do, but they've been associated with. How many of our heroes we killed? How many of our heroes we assassinated? How many of our heroes we've spoken bad about after all the good things they've done? I know what it feels like to fail. I know what it feels like to be thought of as a failure. I know what it feels like, and it's not a pleasant experience, to be called unfairly a perpetrator of evil. To be spoken about as if I am a black sheep. I know what it feels like to be in the position Superman ended up in. And I think some of you do too. Because if you are someone who questions things and thinks a lot, people are going to say things which are not true about you. Because what? People hate what they don't understand. So this movie was made for me as far as I'm concerned. I enjoyed the crap out of it. Saw it 10 times. because it appealed to me. This moment appealed to me. I cried through this moment. Every time I see it, I cry. Lois Lane looking at him, and he looks at her. It's a senseless, seemingly horrendous disaster. Everything ended in a disaster. My best efforts ended in a disaster. What did they say about Batman v Superman? It's a beautiful mess. It's a disaster. Zack Snyder's best efforts poured his heart and soul into it. And what did they call the movie? A disaster. What do you do after that? What do you do after that? Come on now. Do you abandon your values? Do you go tooth and nail? Do you go down in the mud and you behave like a pig and you rip and rag people up? I did it. What do you do? You're supposed to inspire, to heal, to build. What do you do? Do you retreat? Do you run? Do you hide? Do you hate? What do you do? I want you to think about that. I enjoy BVS because for the first time in a comic book movie or in Hollywood movies in general, unless they're documentaries, they truly took time out of that whole thing to show us the first responders responding. Generally, we go to the first responders and we just see it for the impact of how much of a disaster it was. But here we could hear the first responders talking to people. We could hear them caring for people. Supermen. These are supermen. This is us. This is humanity. In a disaster, we see sometimes the best of ourselves. The true heroes. While Superman was gone or around and he left, these people were here. Because see, in a world, even with Superman, we need each other. We need people, just the normal people. The normal heroes. I love that Zack Snyder showcased these people. I really did. I enjoyed the crap out of it. And he again throws the buck back at us. And he's saying to us, we, you and me, we make that difference. The little guy, just doing his job. See, while Superman had left the scene, these people were still cleaning up, doing the heavy lifting, trying to secure the place, the policemen, the firemen, the military, the first responders. You know how much hard work the first responders do when a disaster happens? Special people. And they deserved to be highlighted. And I just wanted to take time out to show their care here. And he spent a lot of time just letting the camera rove on them, listening to them. And I thought that was worth the time, at least a minute, 2 minutes in. Beautiful. It's about time they got some credit on a movie. Now, I know there's some movies where it actually featured like firemen, or there have been movies, cop movies and stuff. But I'm saying this movie really touched me in that it touched on that. And it didn't just touch and then disappear on it. No, they touched on it and stayed for a minute. It's beautiful. Relevance. A realistic movie not only has metaphorical relevance, but it also has physical relevance. And it's palpable evidence and relevance. It's strange that some of the statements Lex Luthor makes are so very real to the world today. And so I decided to pull one or two of his statements out. This one has to do with his disagreement with Senator Finch on the importation of a possible weaponized material, kryptonite, into the United States of America. What's interesting is his comment and how parallel his comment is to the comments of actual politicians today. Now, remember, he's from the business community, so he has some parallels between someone else who's from the business community who ends up in government. So let's get to it. Lex Luthor says, yes, the chair of the Committee on Superman is soft on security. Donald J. Trump, who also is a businessman, by the way, he said this about the security of the United States of America. Border Patrol agents are not allowed to properly do their job at the border because of ridiculous liberal Democrat laws like catch and release. Getting more dangerous. Caravans coming. Republicans must go to nuclear option to pass tough laws. Now, no more DACA deal. So he's saying that the liberals are soft on the national security of the borders. That's what he's effectively saying. The very same thing that Lex Luthor's been saying. And it's interesting seeing the people that support him. The Hill, which is a Republican paper, says Trump's efforts to secure the border is making America safe again. In other words, Donald Trump and Republicans are saying that the Democrats, I'm not saying I'm a Democrat, but nonetheless, they're soft on the security of America's borders. An allegation that Lex Luthor had, where he had an underlying motivation for what he was doing. His motivation was to kill Superman because of his xenophobia. And Donald Trump, his underlying motivation, as we know, is to keep immigrants out of the country as much as he can. And my point being xenophobia. And my point being that there's always this underlying motive behind sinister things. And I found that very interesting that Lex Luthor shared that with Donald Trump. As I said before, Lex Luthor is very real. Not just a fictionalized character. He's very real. Power in the hands of men. Let's keep it moving. This is another one that I thought was very interesting, almost prophetic in some respects. Lex Luthor speaking to Batman. Batman, of course, saying, whatever you do, wherever you go, I'll be watching you. And Batman's about to brand his ass, right? And Lex Luthor says, look at us. This is how it all caves in. Civilization on the way, manners out the window. And that's interesting because that literally is the case that just happened recently. It's sort of prophetic in some ways. Nancy Pelosi says, in the crucial months ahead, we must strive to make America beautiful again. Trump's daily lack of civility has provoked responses that are predictable but unacceptable. As we go forward, we must conduct elections in a way that achieves unity from sea to shining sea. And this is because the Democrat Representative Maxine Walters encourages her supporters to harass the Trump administration officials. And that is not seen as very civil. Here, a lot of people say it's not very civil. Donald Trump responds by saying, congratulations to Maxine Walters, whose crazy rants have made her, together with Nancy Pelosi, who is not trying to condone that, the unhinged face of the Democratic Party. Together, they will make America weak again. But have no fear. America is now stronger than ever. And I'm not going anywhere. Which is very uncivil, the way how he spoke. And again, we can see in the world today, manners is going out the window. People are not really taking time to be careful what they say and how they say it for the sake of hospitality and for the sake of civility. And I find that very interesting. And my point being this, Lex Luthor spoke about that in Batman v Superman. I'm sure it's Chris Terrio, again, the writer. This was in the year when, by the way, Donald Trump was calling people all kinds of names, and calling women ugly and just being very dirty. And I think Chris Terrio kind of threw that in there to represent the times. But it's also very prophetic, I find, and very relevant to our times. And this realism is something that I find very interesting in the movie. Let me just get to your chat comments, because I know you guys are chatting up a storm in here. And here's what we have to say. Trent Osborne. Oh, hold on a second. Let me just back up a little bit here. Okay. Do you think, DJ Lost and Found says, do you think Zach planned to discuss grace following failure? No. No. This is personal failure. This is where someone within themselves has failed, and failed ideologically. That is, my purpose for being here, I failed to accomplish that. And so this was not so much about having grace with oneself or being merciful to oneself, or even the world having grace for Superman. This was more about an introspect. So what happens when you fail miserably at what you seek to accomplish? In fact, instead of what you seek to accomplish, the opposite happens. What do you do? And so you need the motivation to go onwards, right? Because you can even be pardoned, but you never engage in what you were doing ever again. You don't ever go back to helping people the way you were doing before. And so this is something that is fundamentally important to discuss. And so it wasn't so much about grace or the world even giving Superman grace. This was more about a fundamental issue, which had to do with literally doing something that is worst case scenario, something that you would be afraid of doing, and something that you would hate to have done. Okay. As Christians, for example, I'm going to come from a Christian perspective because I'm a Christian. You are opposed to stealing, right? It grates against every single ideal you know about, yet you go and you steal something, knowingly knowing you're stealing, and you want to stop stealing, but you can't. That can be so discouraging. You're addicted to something, and you know it's wrong, but you're doing it and you can't stop. And it goes against everything you stand for and everything you believe in your heart. That can be destructive. And what gives you the will to move on? So many a person has gone insane or mad, or some people have just given up on life because of certain things that just hit at the core of who they are, and they just never recover from it. So to me, this movie goes to the essence of a fundamental issue each and every one of us may at some point in our lives face. And how do we deal with it is based on our choice. T&J Alice says, as if he's losing touch, kind of like Dr. Manhattan in Watchmen. Dr. Manhattan in Watchmen, no. In that Dr. Manhattan loved a certain lady, and that kept him sort of grounded to earth. Then he found out that she loved someone else, and therefore he had no reason to be in touch with earth. With Clark's case, it's a fundamental ideological reason why he has become discouraged. It is not because of Lois Lane. He loves Lois Lane. Lois Lane loves him. Doesn't have a problem with that. So it's not a connection. It's not that he has lost connection with humanity. It is that he fundamentally feels at this point in time that everything he's doing is only worsening the situation, and maybe he just shouldn't have tried to be an inspirational figure. In other words, Superman no longer thinks of himself as Superman. He thinks that's an illusion. All right? That he can't really truly inspire people. that his best efforts to try and work along with mankind, inspire people, leads to these huge atrocities and disasters. It's better he didn't do anything. So that's how that in essence is where he's at. Dr. Manhattan was tied to Earth through his love for one woman. And when she didn't love him anymore, he had no reason to be on Earth anymore. Okay, so it's a bit different, ideologically speaking, because Dr. Manhattan, the only thing was, he was tied to this woman. He was attached to her, and that's what attached him to Earth. Whatever she said to do, he would do it. But he wasn't tied any other way. Superman was born, raised, grew up as a human, in humanity. That's all he knows. You see, he does not know the life of being a Kryptonian. You have to understand that. So it's going to be hard for him to abandon humanity and abandon the world. He's still going to have to live amongst humanity. But for him, he is thinking of going back into anonymity and just being a guy, just a Joe Bloke amongst humanity. That's what basically he's thinking of doing, and abandoning the Superman character altogether. So you have to understand, you know what? Wonder Woman is a perfect example of that. Wonder Woman continued to help people and everything, but she stayed in the shadows. She was out in the forefront. In fact, her story is very much like what happened to Clark here in this story. She was affected in a way in which, because she let out, people died. Her main issue was not that she was liked by humanity. Her issue wasn't attachment to anyone. It was that when she let out, it cost people their lives. And very much the same thing. Superman feels like when he really tries to give it his all, people die in horrific ways. So her hesitancy to come into the forefront and be a beacon of light is what Superman right now is wrestling with. You understand? It's not that he's going to abandon mankind, he's going to continue to help people. He can't help himself. But he's probably going to do it under the shadow of anonymity. He's going to disappear and go some part in the world and kind of hide out, kind of like Aquaman. You understand? So that's the difference. It's Dr. Manhattan left Earth altogether because he didn't see any relevance in being on Earth anymore. You understand? Superman is not that. It's not indifference that leads Superman to behave the way it is. It's literally a deep-seated loss that the ideal he's holding and striving towards seems too big to be achieved. That he has failed to be that ideal or to embody it. And he feels it's unattainable. He thinks it's an illusion that he's Superman. So that's what's so beautiful about it. Trent Osborne says, this moment was a strong moment, and it's something I know. I often have some people coming to me for help because of my empathy, and I can't stand when I can't make someone feel better. Oh, dude, I know that feeling, man. When you try your best and you're just not the person for the job. You can't inspire that person. Somebody else comes in and they actually inspire that person. And you're like, man, I was actually keeping that person back. You think I should really go back and try and inspire anybody else again? Yeah, I know that feeling, bro. Damian Anton Vincent says, I listened Nerdy Nick podcast, and one person mentioned that Zack Snyder has the ability to make his characters make these micro expressions that express the mood of the situation. Yeah, it's very subtle to some, but if you've been through that stuff, you know what it is. You know what that's feeling like, and it's just the music that Hans Zimmer puts at that moment, and just the way how Zack Snyder took the shot when Superman kind of stares off and then you see Lewis staring at him, and you see all the background and all the people, and some people have horrific shock on their face from the scene, and the first responders are doing their thing and ignoring Superman, and just, man, it's just so, like, it's one of those moments, man. It's one of those moments that really had me tearing up, because I remembered all the times, when I failed, and just all the moments when, you know, uh, you wondered, because you have this genuine desire to see people better and to see people happy around you, and you fail, and it turns like a shitstorm comes down on you, and it's like shit, and like these people are worse off for it, and you're like, God damn it, why did I even push myself in there? And you regret it, and it's like it's the worst thing in the world. It's the worst thing in the world. So I could totally, like, identify with that, man. And even hearing people close to you that love you, saying that you were like the worst thing in the world is just like the worst thing in the world. It's the hardest experience ever. I just, and then the whole world, they hated Superman. Well, not the whole world, but a lot of people who were vocal hated Superman. It's just, a lot of people trying to come to terms where it just happened. It was very shocking. I mean, if you were in the cinema when that first happened, you would be shocked as well. Like, you would not have seen that coming. You knew something was coming, but you didn't expect that. And by the moment you did figure it out, it was too late. It already happened. So, TNJ Ayala says, true that, Trent. Damien Anton Vincent says, please refrain from sport references. I'm still salty. I'm sorry, bro. I'm sorry. I'm sorry, man. I'm sorry. I know I'm chuckling, but I'm not really chuckling. It's like, dude, I know what you mean. TNJ Ayala says, Clark is an introvert. How can he not in a cynical world? I don't think he's an introvert. I don't think Clark's an introvert. I think because Clark, remember, he went and interviewed different people, and he was talking to the lady in Gotham. I mean, he seems to be talking to people in the Daily Planet. I think he has a life. I think he talks to people. I don't think Clark is an introvert, but I do believe he has a unique situation that very few people know about. His mother knows, Lewis knows, and then people in Smallville know. I don't think I think he's a reflective person. I think he talks to people. But you may be right, actually. He may be introverted, but I think that I truly believe that it's for a reason he's introverted. That is, he opens up, he talks to people, but I think he gets stimulated by sometimes being by himself. But I don't think he's an introvert, but this dude reminds me a lot of myself as well. Clark reminds me of me. So I kind of identify with him. So I kind of like him for that reason too. And I like the take on him. But you're someone who's, in a way, you're an outsider, kind of like, because you're different. He's different. The movie The Accountant, and talking about people being different, and he's different. I love that movie because you see people on the surface, a lot of people, prominent people even, and you don't understand how different they are to you. How they think so differently. And my eyes was open to that back in 2006, 2007. I'm gonna let you guys in on something. So I can't tell you everything, but I can tell you this. In 2006, 2007, I learned a lot about people, that people are not what they appear to be and what they seem to be, and even how they project themselves to other people. Very few people are organically authentic. That is, they are really what you see them to be. And so what's interesting about this, like, if you see me in another setting, you would not believe it's me. On the internet, how I behave is not exactly who I am, yet it is an aspect of me. But if you were to see me in an everyday setting, you'd be shocked how different I am to how I portray myself on the internet, even though how I portray myself on the internet is actually also a dimension of me, which is really who I am as well. And so it's like, That's the interesting thing about people. They are much more complicated than people think, and that's why I say don't just label someone, because there's a lot of dimension to people. So anyway, 2006, 2007, 2008, I was in a relationship with a wonderful lady, and on the surface she appeared a certain way, and as I got to know her and peel back those layers, and she has many layers, I got to see how wonderful a person can be, and just how much, because you see, when you get closer and closer to people, there are bad things about them, you find out about, no doubt about that, but there's also great and fascinating and wonderful things, and mysterious things about people that make you think to yourself, my God, wow. And so let me just say to you guys, regardless of whatever you think about me, she had a profound impact on me. She made me realize how much, she made me comfortable in my skin, the bad things about myself and the good things about myself. But on top of that, she was able to allow me to become much more organic about how I perceived certain things, that I understood why. And not only that, but become more organic in how I related to other people. I talk about me first before I talk about her. She had many layers to her. And the point behind it is that what I initially thought she was turned out she was better than that in so many ways. And yet at the same time, she was also terrifying. She was terrifying because I entered into sort of a, when you share another person's world, you're really sharing something so different to your world. A lot of us want to have people who are like us. She had lots of things in common with me, but there were many things that she did not have in common at all, and that we did not agree on at all. Now, when you disagree with someone, there are two things you can do. You can disagree with them and say, there's three things, actually. And you can vilify them for disagreeing with them. The second thing you can do is disengage by saying, let's agree to disagree and move on to something else. Or you can try to understand where they're coming from. And through really painful situations, I began to learn to listen. And I began to be able to see her world from her perspective. And even in disagreement, I began to value her world from her perspective. And it's dramatically different to my world and how I see my world. And I say all of this so that people would understand how important it is to understand people are not what they seem to be. And the more you get to know them, as unpleasant as it may be, is the more you are filled with awe about how beautiful people can be, not just in their actions, even in their most atrocious actions. There's something beautiful about them, and mysterious and wonderful. Makes you scratch your head. Life is not just logic, guys. So my point being, anyway, that because people do not appear to be what they are, and they're very complicated, every human being, it is important to understand that what someone portrays is not exactly them. It's an aspect of them, but it's not exactly them. And why I say this now is because coming from an understanding of people and just, oh man, God, That's why I keep on saying to each and every one of you out there that you're just wonderful. You have no clue. And wonderful doesn't necessarily mean you are a great, or there's something, that there's only good things in you. Wonderful doesn't mean that. All it means is I'm filled with awe every time I meet a human being like myself. I'm filled with awe. I'm always in wonder. I'm always asking questions. I'm always stimulated to watch a person all new in a new way every single time, because people tend to change, and they have choices, and they can change their choice, and they can change how they go about doing things. They're not very predictable. And that's the nice thing about human beings. It's scary as hell, but it's nice. So, yeah. So TNJ Alla, I would say that maybe he was an introvert. Maybe he is, but he has a small circle of friends. But he does talk to people, obviously. But the beauty of Clark that I love, and he is a very layered character, right? The beauty of Clark that I love is that even in our world, Clark could find the flower in the midst of the mud. He's an optimistic person, as serious as he was. And he always looked for truth and justice. And you can see him trying to find justice in Gotham, right? When he's researching the Batman, right? So that's what I got to say on that. We are talking about all kinds of stuff, but I just wanted to share that with you guys because, experiences in life are worth their learning points. They're learning points, good and bad experiences. The good is to also inspire you to do more good and to pursue that line, maybe just pursue it even better. And the bad helps us to realize, certain things, but maybe we shouldn't be doing, and, see the other side of the coin, etc., and adjust things, right? Trent Osborne says, however, I can't let that destroy my empathy. Otherwise, every word of hope I told them was a lie, and that's a failure we can prevent. Keeping our ideals alive, especially in the face of failure. Exactly, Trent. That's what this movie was about. If I had to summarize what Batman v Superman Dawn of Justice was about, it's about keeping the hope of a positive outcome by doing good, continuing to do good in spite of the failures we face. Doing good. And that, to me, is the key point in Batman v Superman Dawn of Justice. Even if it costs us our lives, the outcome is not the thing we should really set our eyes completely on. It's the process and the fact that we are doing good and that we don't stop it. In the Bible, it says, don't cease from doing good. And there are times when you're challenged to do that, to withdraw, to retract, to hide, to go back into the shadows. Keeping our ideals alive, especially. All right. Damien Anson Vincent says, Lionel Messi! The sport media loves to hate him. Hey, man, he's a hell of a player, though. All right? And I feel sorry for Argentina. I see you're an Argentinian fan. If they're out of the World Cup, no problem. It happens, bro. It happens. It happens. But he's a hell of a player. And they can't take that away from him. TNJ Ellis says, never compromise, Trent. That's right. You guys got it. Zack Snyder said it too. Trent Osborne. All right, let's see what we got here. Trent Osborne says, well, not exactly. Compromise is a very important, seeing possible outcomes that may go beyond our perspective. There's a balance between one's ideals and their acceptance of things that are different from it. Absolutely. But we don't compromise giving hope to others. We don't compromise our purpose of trying to help others. We want everything to fall in line with our purpose, right? I think that's what he was talking about. J&J Alice says, it's a Watchmen reference, Trent. J&J Alice says, hey, Anson, is that what happens to Luke Skywalker in The Last Jedi? Yes! You got it! He lost hope. And then he found it back. Yes! And he went into the shadows. Yes! But he's not the first in Star Wars to do that. Right? Obi-Wan Kenobi did it. Master Yoda did it. They went and hide, right? Because hope was lost, right? Okay. TNJ says, hey, Trent, why did they change the ending to Watchmen? No alien? I'm going to leave that one alone. Trade says, I love Watchmen, both comic and movie, and that line is amazing, even though I'm not certain if I agree with it or not. Trade says, I think it was to create the idea of God unleashing his wrath upon humanity. Adrian wanted humanity to remain in fear, so he made a permanent, near indefeatable enemy, Dr. Manhattan. He didn't, well, yes, he faked, it was a fake enemy, right? I meant the original ending. Where are we? I meant the original ending in the graphic novel, which is similar to Birthright. Trent Osborne says, as for why, I can't really say, but I think I have an idea. In the comic, it's an alien threat, while it's a near biblical one in the movie. I feel this is in relation with Zach's personal beliefs. I thought he was trying to relate it to our world, and he was going to use the Cold War as an example, that even something, that's propaganda can bring people together. Once it's a bigger threat than all others. And Ozymandias was trying to work that through. All right. So let's keep it moving here, folks, because I still got more. So let's move on to the next thing here, which is, okay, this one's not as deep, but it's something that I think is important for us to discuss. So how Zack Snyder was able to push forth this realism and these truths that we were talking about is through a multifaceted way. And I was looking at, like I said, it's like the Bible, this thing. There are details in the movie that give away what information is there. So there's different media outlets. Like you see these different media outlets, your CNN, MSNBC, NPR, MDN2, and GBS. Now, I did not know what MDN2 was. I don't know if you saw my last one of my videos where I was showing the different media, and I put a question mark by MDN2 because I didn't know what it was. But the answer was in the movie. And I just put some snapshots together so you guys can see what it is. And so this is the truck for MDN2. I figured out, well, if it's media, it should be around. And I was right. And you just piece it together and you can figure out what it is. So you can see this is ME. That's probably a T. You see the DC sign there. DC, remember they're in Washington, DC. And so this truck, if it's, this truck seemed to be giving some of the information. They see an MET, all right? And you see CA here, right? And then you see here METRO, so Metro. So that told me it's Metro. And you see DC, so it's Metro DC. So these two letters here stand for Metro and DC. And what does this N stand for? I thought it was network, right? But then I was able to look at another part in the movie and see that, it was news. So I found out that it was Metro DC News Channel 2. So Metro DC News 2, which is a fictitious, it's actually a fictitious television station. It's a fictitious television station for Washington, D.C., which I thought was really cool. And, nobody covered that. No one has covered that. Okay. I went back to DC Extended Universe, Batman v Superman Wiki. They don't even have it. All right. So I thought it was really cool that I found that out. And it's all in the movie. And that's the thing about Zack Snyder. Zack Snyder has all these little bits and pieces inside of the movie. Now, in addition, like I said, if you look at these 3 slides here, you are going to see so much stuff. It's not funny. All right. And let me show you what I'm talking about. In this slide gives you the elements, which is able to give Zack Snyder the realism. The first thing you're seeing is the media, obviously. So this is the media here. Okay. In the background, that's Superman statue, by the way, in DC. Then you have governance, which is Senator Finch. Okay. This is the media again. Some of these people are media people. But then here you see the kids here. So that is, and some adults. So we had the protesters, okay, politics. So we have the protesters there. And then we have the supporters. Protesters and supporters are together. Okay. We had the media here in this world. And we have the security. Here's the police officer here. All right. We have security, or the military, the security, etc. And then we have the media. And then we have here the governance. All right. And then on top of that, we also had the first responders, the fire service, paramedics, etc. when the disaster happened. And we also had some special forces come in, and we also had the protection agencies. Okay. All of these elements were here. Now, you got to understand, emphasis was placed on each and every one of them. I as well as, since it's televised and through the media, we were also watching people watching the incident on television, right? We had probably people like Bruce Wayne, then we had the average person, the average Joe, and then we had people, Superman's mom inside of a diner, and the people in the diner watching it from Smallville. So we had people all over the world watching this incident as well. And I found this so interesting that Zack Snyder was able to pull all those different elements together. And each of those elements I just spoke of is a character in and of itself in the movie. You see? That's how crazy Batman v Superman Dawn of Justice is. Right? Not to mention the amount of media and the amount of attention to media in this movie is ridiculous. And we have both fake media and fake media personnel, and we have real media and real media personnel inside. In fact, this must be the most amount of media people ever in a movie. Okay, we have people from Fox News, Detroit. We have people from CNN in there. We had people from MSNBC. We had people from NPR. We had people from what do you call that? HLN. We had people from, I mean, you name the news channels, they were there. Both right-wing and left-wing channels. I just thought it was so cool. And so I just wanted to share that with you. Oh, I didn't forget, the military was also there in this movie, right? I mean, you name it, it was there. And so why I say that's important, and real military people from the military, real media people from media, right? People from the world, real police people, real paramedics were actually in this movie acting alongside fake, actors who were playing paramedics. So I'm just saying that's the kind of movie you're dealing with. And to me, that's a credit to all these different elements. All right, let me just go back and see what you guys are saying. All right, word up, Trent. That makes sense. All right, let me see here. Let me keep it moving, because I don't know how long I've been doing this video. It's long. And this is the perfect example again. And I keep on finding new media people. So in the scene where Lex Luthor was charging up the ship and stuff, and the military was protecting him, because remember, he had gotten access. So they were not, the military wasn't even investigating the thing. It's keeping people off. And all these flashes of lightning and stuff was going on. And the military is there because remember, Lex Luthor has a pass, right? Well, the reporter that's speaking here on News 8, she's speaking from Metropolis News 8. This is Metropolis. Which is basically, she does Fox Detroit as well. So she was a Detroit. This is Detroit, pretty much. Metropolis is Detroit. So they used the persons who were right there in Detroit, right? That makes sense. And so this is a real reporter. Her name is Erickson. Okay. And you can see her above here. And I have to zoom in so you guys can actually truly see her. Oh, yeah, that's good. So I just want you to have a good look at her here. And she's the same lady. It's Erica Erickson. She's kind of slim. All right. And she's not only seen here, but she's also seen here when she was Kahina Zahiri. When Kahina Zahiri was being interviewed, this is her again interviewing her. Even though she's interviewing her in Gotham, she's really interviewing her for the Metropolis Channel 8, which is owned by YGBT, right? As you know, which is also known as Galaxy Communications, which in Washington, D.C. is known as GBS, which is Galaxy Broadcasting System, all right? But what's interesting is she is just another one of several media people. I mean, there were several media people in this movie, a lot. You go through the credits, you'll see a whole bunch of them, right? And some of them didn't get credited. There were more that they were going to have in the movie, but they didn't show up in the movie. So I just find this very, very interesting that, again, you have these real media people in fictitious situations, which are parallels to the real world. She's with Fox 2 right there. She's Fox 2. And so Fox 2 would be like Metropolis Channel 8. That's the equivalent of it. So I just thought it was really cool. And I wanted to point that out. And so many times I've seen all these interesting little things that you didn't pay attention. And the other thing that was interesting about this is we're actually seeing it from the other side of the camera. So we actually seen the cameraman pick up his camera and he's going to film the issue, and there's the other cameraman there. So we actually saw it from the other side of the camera, the behind the scenes kinds of stuff. And I thought it was also very cool as well, showing them setting up and everything. All right. There's a lot more, like, this artwork behind Clark and stuff. I can't go into all of that stuff. That's reflective of his situation and everything. All right. This here is just a little, what do you think? All right. Cool. So the question that's asked is, this place that Batman's coming out from, is it the same as the place that the Batmobile entered into to go down to the Batcave, right? Is it the same place? So what do you guys think, right? I put this up on social media already, but everything else I did not. So you guys can answer that question if you so wish. And this is basically brings me to the end of the video. On these different things that were inside of this movie. But like I said, the discussion of power and how you have power, and also the fact that even when you do fail miserably, do you continue onwards? And the answer to that, of course, in this movie is when he spoke with his father and he found out, that just the other people in your life should be enough motivation to keep you pushing onwards. Because like I said before, the need is still going to be there, whether you continue or not. So you might as well continue. Just because you make a disaster of something doesn't mean you don't continue. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video. I come to the end of it finally. Leave your comments about what you think about what you just saw there concerning the Batmobile going into the Batcave and Batman coming out of what seems like a passageway to the Batcave. Do you think it's the same passageway? Do you think it's a similar passageway? Some of you guys already spoke on this in social media, but I still want to hear your views. And that's the end of my video, guys. I'll just entertain some comments here. The Aquaman scene in Aquaman. Okay, you guys are not saying much right now. The scene in Aquaman. Let me come out of this. Let me come out of this first of all. Let me come out of this. How did I do that? Let me come out of this. All right, we can talk face to face. There you go. Woo! My face is all the way up on the my face is all the way up on the camera. We can talk face to face for a little bit about the DCEU and some upcoming things if you guys want to. Let me just cancel off. I have to cancel off here. Nothing. Okay. So yeah. Aquaman. Oh wow, it's 8:12. I don't even know how long I've been talking. Aquaman was maybe 4 hours, maybe. Aquaman is an upcoming movie. I saw the underwater fish, the Fish King, I think he's called, the Fisherman King, and that's pretty cool. I heard Grace Randall saying that she thought that it would be so weird. She can't understand how he could grow gills and look like a fish. And I was saying, well, because he comes from a human, right? He evolved from a human. And I'm saying, she said if Aquaman, and Orm and all these guys, they didn't look like fish, why is this guy looking like a fish? And I was like, no, if things evolve from, just because they have an origin doesn't mean they wouldn't evolve into something else based on conditions. And, take, for instance, the thought and the theory of evolution that, humans come from a similar ancestor to the primates, such as apes, right? Common ancestor. So you can't really say how the morphology of something or the structure or how something will look just because they have a common ancestry means that they will evolve into something similar, right? So I just wanted to point that out there. And of course, Aquaman has gills, just that you don't see them visibly. And she was saying Aquaman doesn't have gills, and I'm like, no, Aquaman has gills, okay? And the Fish King does have gills too. So but my thing with the portrait that I saw from EU is that that portrait, you can see that the special effects are not in it. And so when they put in the special effects, I think that's when it gets really interesting. You guys don't have any more comments to say in the comment section, or am I still live? Can you guys still hear me? The special effects, I think. Okay, you guys can still hear me. I just realized that. All right, guys. So anybody got anything else to say concerning the DCU with thoughts? Remember, guys, you do count, and it's up to you to really make a difference in the world today. It's dependent on you. You are important. Um, and live out your destiny, man. Share this video with some other people. It's a pretty long video. Some people will be interested in it. Some people will not be interested in it. It was nice really having this meaningful conversation with a lot of you. Shout out to William Ruffin if he ever sees this video. Shout out to you, brother. And also shout out to some other people who usually support, like Leroy Kong. Leroy Kong and this other guy comes here sometimes. I forgot your name, bro. I forgot your name, but you come through every now and then. DJ Lost and Found says, not feeling the Aquaman picks. I feel the same way like you, DJ Lost and Found. Absolutely agree with you. I'm in alignment with that. It didn't feel the way how I would expect it to have, but I'm thinking maybe the special effects. I don't like the lighting and the coloring of things per se. It feels kind of fakish, too shiny and stuff, and feels like they're trying to do a Marvel move. I know they work with special effects with light and magic. So there's certain things I don't feel as well. DJ Lost and Found, and I find your taste is probably similar to mine. So we'll see how it goes, though. We'll see how it goes. It looks like it's going to be an epic movie, and you got to give the movie a chance first, because remember, some of the special effects are not there. There are some practical effects. I heard some people saying that it looks better than any other DCEU film, and I'm laughing about that. Your taste and how things look is a strange one, but at the same time, we have to really give them a chance to really fully show what they have. And I'm saying strange one, but I think that's a popular view. I think I just see the world differently to some people. TNJ Ayala says, the angel in Bruce's dream has the same colors as Superman. Yes. That is interesting. Yes, Michael the Archangel. That's true. Blue and red, and yes. Because Superman is also Defender. That's a nice observation right there. TNJL. That's a very nice observation. I never saw that. That is really cool. DJ Lost and Found says, yes, I'm excited to see Aquaman. Oh yeah, dude. Absolutely. Hey, by the way, could you guys just put as a show of support, hashtag release the Snyder Cut, because this is the reason why we need a Snyder Cut of Justice League. There's a lot more going on in the movie, Justice League movie, than what we actually saw on the screen. What we saw on the screen was okay, but okay is, Zack does so much better. But nonetheless, again, I'm not going to be like the people of the world who bash Superman in BVS and say it was a complete failure. Like Joss Whedon was talking about, I failed. Look, man, just keep pressing forward, Joss Whedon. Much love and peace to you, brother. And I hope that things work out well for you. But now we were pushing for the Snyder Cut. I don't hate Joss Whedon. I don't hate WB. I'm just suggesting to WB that they don't make the same mistakes. But of course, how could I hate WB and they're going to put out some other movies that I want to see? No, hell no. But I'm hoping that, we stress on the Snyder Cut. I keep on trying to point out certain things I love about the DCEU that I think a lot of people haven't vocalized yet. And it's sad that my video is so long, and I don't know how many people actually watch this video. It'd be nice if you guys could share this video on social media, see if people like it. I know Dave Ethan will do that, but I'm saying that at the end of the day, it's very important to still speak about what you love, whether it's popular to people or not, and that's what I'm doing out here. So, yeah, I think that Aquaman, I didn't dig the photos either. DJ Lost and Found. I actually wasn't hyped about the photos, I'll be honest with you. Shazam looked a little bit more fun for me, but then again, Shazam that's what Shazam is, and I'm learning about the character as we see those stuff too. So yeah, upcoming in the DCEU. Here's some fun stuff to think about with the DCEU that I think some of you guys are going to salivate about, maybe not, but yeah, they did say in the news that one actor is acting in two of the different movies, Shazam and Aquaman. So one actor is acting two different roles in Shazam and Aquaman, which is pretty interesting. So we saw the Fisherman King. Head does look like a kind of fish. But again, this is a head I've seen before. Like the prosthetics and the way how they did the head. I've seen this character in Star Wars, actually. a similar. You remember the people who used to live under the sea in a certain planet? It reminds me of them. So it's not like something new I've seen. So I'm hoping for something new to be seen in Aquaman. We'll see. I don't know. You know, I'm hoping and praying for the best. Let's put it that way. Um, Zack Snyder said that he said that Feora was alive. You heard that? He confirmed that Feora was alive. Uh, so that's really cool. Um, we know that Zack Snyder's Unite the Seven image was the Unite the Seven Seas. But Zack Snyder double speaks, so he's also talking about the Unite the Seven in the league, I believe, as well. I'm just looking at some current news here from Dave's Google. It says Zack Snyder hints that a certain Batman v Superman character may not be dead. And I'm just pulling it up so you guys can see it. Let me go to screen share so you guys can see what I'm talking about here. Before I come out. Okay, hold on a second. This is actually pulling up a lot of my computer space. So let me cut that there. All right, good. This is taking up a lot of computer space. My computer's kind of slowing down. I'm still going to go screen share so you guys can see it. Is the video breaking up? Am I breaking up or something? I hope not. All right, so this is what I'm looking at here in Screen Rant. Now, in BVS, Dawn of Justice was a pretty lethal film for both supporting and major characters. On top of many nameless mooks that the Dark Knight slaughtered and Luthor exploded, there was not nameless mooks, man. Come on. There was climatic end of Superman, the defeat of the rampaging Doomsday, and the death by explosion of Lex Luthor's assistant bodyguard Mercy Graves. Since then, Superman has risen from the dead, and DCU's Doomsday is apparently still out there. He's not out there. He's dead, but I don't know what's going on with him. Zack Snyder is hinting that the apparently blown to bits Graves may have survived. At least the DCU is continuing the age-old comic book tradition of death being, at worst, a temporary setback. Let's see here. Where is that? Well, fair enough, Zach. I suppose we don't actually get to see Mercy dying on screen. However, she sat right next to the incendiary bomb that violently explodes, sends giant plumes of fire out of the front of the building, and then we see inside has reduced the interior to flaming ash. The only real way she could have feasibly survived is if she is a secret Kryptonian, and if Lex Luthor has managed to genetically engineer a sexy, superpowered personal assistant. You'd think Batman v Superman would have made a bigger deal of it. Not necessarily. No, they don't make a big deal about certain things. Another slight wrinkle is that it doesn't matter whether Snyder's being all cryptic or not. It's not like Warner Bros. Is going to welcome him back with open arms. Let bygones be bygones and let him helm the Mercy Graves solo film that everyone's crying out for, right? Okay, so this person is being sarcastic, which is interesting. David James. I guess he hates Snyder. But at the end of the day, if Mercy Graves is not dead, it's probably because Mercy Graves, as you guys do know, is Amazonian. That's right. She comes from Themyscira. So maybe I'm saying, maybe she's a special breed of Amazonian and she knows how to protect herself from those kinds of blasts. Who knows? Or if she's more durable. Who knows? I don't know. Let's see what you guys are saying here. TNJ Alice says, I dig James Wan's style. Cool. James Wan's going to have some horror in it and stuff, so I'm going to look forward to that. Bernard said, I believe Zack Snyder is set to appear at Comic-Con, so that could mean something in regards to that. If Zack Snyder will be at Comic-Con, then mentioning Snyder Cut at such a public event will really put it out there. Damian Anton says, didn't Mercy walk out the courtroom? No, she didn't. She was in the courtroom sitting down She was looking very intently. Nope, she was in the courtroom. When you see her leave the courtroom, I don't remember that. Actually, let me go look at it right now. Okay. Anyway, I thought that was interesting for you guys to check out. It's from We Got This Covered. Uh, let me see here. Yeah, so that's the explosion of the Capitol building. Let me come out of this. And boom. So here I am out of it again. All right, it's 8:25 in the night, folks. I don't want to keep you guys too much longer. It's been fun talking with you guys, though, but it's time to go. It's been fun talking with you guys on this movie and going a little deeper. But let's take this and use it as action. Let's use it as action. Let's not be deterred from doing good as much as we can all over the internet. I know Dave Ethan knows about this, and others of you, even to doing good, talking about the DCEU as well. So don't, even if you're not popular, stand up for principles, stand up for things. Even if you fail, keep standing up for it and keep on being vocal about it as well. All right. Well, it's nice talking to you guys. I hope you guys have a great night. I got to go now. So wish you well. You can check out the latest DCEU news, and blessings to you all, man. You guys have a good night. All right. You won't see me tomorrow. Bless. Peace.